Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
Messages from my ex. My name is Spencer Green. I'm a 27-year-old baker who works in East Manhattan. Oh no, I'm not an unhappy single man. I married the love of my life, Lucy, 2 years ago, and I have a newly born, gorgeous daughter with her. Anyway, the incident I'm about to tell you is something that happened the year I met Lucy. That was 5 years ago. I got reminded of it in the morning when I was working in the bakery and heard two young lads talking about getting into a Facebook scam. No, my story is not related to a Facebook scam, but yeah, it's related to Facebook though. It was one night when I was scrolling through Facebook when I received a notification that said that someone had sent me a message. I checked, and it was from the girl I dated in the final years of high school, Mary. And the reason that I broke up with her was that I caught her cheating on me with not just one, but two other guys. Now, Mary's someone I still don't want to have anything to do with or even a formative conversation with, so I ignored her texts. I don't know why I didn't think of blocking her right away, but I should have. I continued scrolling through my phone, and that's when I got the urge to use the bathroom. So I put my phone down and went over to do my business. On my return, when I checked the phone, there were 20 message notifications from her, in which she was apologizing and saying that she would do anything to have me back, including things like she knows that I still have feelings for her, and that was the reason I did not block her right away, knowing that it was her. And I thought that if she thinks that was the case for me not blocking her, then I should do it right away. After blocking her, I went over to scrolling through Facebook, and that's when I got another notification. I got a text from a different account, and it was Mary again. And she was angrily asking me, how dare I block her? Again, I did not reply to any of her messages and just blocked her right away, giving her the hint that I wanted nothing to do with her. Which she did not get, because 2 days later, I got another message from a different account, and the message read, "No matter how many times you push me away, I will keep coming back and breaking your boundaries because I love you." I know what she might be thinking while sending this. She might be thinking that this is somewhat romantic, but it was not. I only found it creepy. This time I got frustrated by the constant messages, so I decided to reply. "I think I made it very clear that I do not want anything to do with you. So stop with your messages. It's irritating me." After this text, I blocked her again. For a few days, I did not receive any more messages on Facebook, so I thought that she finally gave it a rest. But one day, when I went home from work feeling tired, I found the lock of my front gate broken. So I immediately ran inside and searched around to see who broke in. The moment I walked into my bedroom, fixation filled my mind from what I was looking at. It was Mary. She had decorated my room with red roses, and she was lying on my bed in the scud herself. That sight was sickening in itself, just to make me feel nauseated. I quietly walked over and grabbed her hand. She looked at me smiling and thinking I would get seduced by her nastiness, but I jolted her from my bed and dragged her outside. After doing that, I went to my room, collected her clothes, and then went back to throw them on her face. "I'm leaving you just by a simple warning, but if you do something like this again, I will report you for breaking into my house." As I said that, she stood there while looking at me with a mortified look. It was good if she felt embarrassed by her actions. She should have been, but I don't think she felt that way. Instead, she felt humiliated enough to falsely report me for something I did not do. The next day, 2 police officers came to my house to question whether or not I harassed my girlfriend. I immediately understood what was going on and tried explaining every single detail to the officers about what had happened, but instead of believing any of my words, they gave me a warning that it should not happen again. I could not believe how low she stooped just to make me sleep with her. All I could think about was how to get out of this situation. I changed the lock and installed the security lock along with a camera on my front door, just so that if she breaks in again, I would have proof. The same evening, I got another message on Facebook from a new account. I knew it was her, so I checked what she had to say now. The message read, "I told you I would come back and break your boundaries, didn't I?" I immediately took a screenshot of this just in case, but I still had no idea how to prove myself innocent if she falsely accuses me of harassment again. The next day, I was working in the bakery with an absent mind, which the owner took notice of and then asked me to take a break. So I went ahead and sat down in the customer area, thinking about everything that had been going on lately. Is there something wrong? I heard a sweet, soft voice of a girl and raised my head to see her. She was sitting on the table beside mine and looking at me with a concerned expression. Why do you ask? I did not want to deal with another woman, so I asked in a rude tone. No, it's just that I've been sitting here for the past half an hour and watching you that you haven't even touched your coffee during that time, she said, and looked over at my coffee, which had become cold by now. It's just a legal situation. I don't think you'd be able to help me, I said, and got ready to leave the table. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I forgot to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Sergeant Lucinda Benson. She reached her hand out after saying that, along with a kind smile on her face, which made me look at her in awe. I'm sorry for being rude. My name is Spencer Green. It's a pleasure meeting you, I said and sat back on the chair. After that, I discussed with her the problem that I was facing and how the girl was falsely accusing me of something that I never did. Lucinda was very mature, and the solution she provided with me was something a person with logic and common sense would easily come up with. But I was in a state of panic, so I never thought about it. The first thing she told me was to stay calm and that there was no need to panic, especially since I'd done nothing wrong. Then she told me that I need to hire an attorney if she were to file any charges against me, because it would be more helpful if I have an experienced attorney advocating for me. And above all, I needed to gather evidence against her. She explained many things along the lines about someone who had been falsely accused and how they could defend themselves. After that, she gave me her number and told me that I could contact her anytime I needed advice or help. As I reached home, I opened Facebook and texted Mary that I have enough proof to claim that I never did anything to her, and I can report her for not only harassing, blackmailing, and even breaking into my house, but she would face charges of defamation as well. I made sure to take a screenshot of her chats, and surprisingly, she did not give any response after that. It must be because she did not think this through before falsely accusing me. One thing that came out as well from this experience was that I met Lucinda. I asked her out on a few dates after that, and after being in a relationship for a long time, I proposed to her. A baker ended up marrying a sergeant. Pretty cool, right? I know that with Lucy by my side, I won't ever need to face someone like that ever again.
I was looking everywhere, but I was unable to find her. God knows where she had gone. After looking almost an entire day, I started to feel worried about Maria. Maria and I had recently gotten married, and we were here in Los Angeles for a honeymoon trip. I met Maria a year ago when I was visiting the Philippines, and I instantly fell in love with her. She was the sweetest, kindest, and most unique girl I know. And as I got to know her, I fell more for her. She had the most beautiful eyes, which were shaped like almonds. She was wearing a knee-length skirt with a knitted shirt, and her curves were showing in the right places, giving her a well-defined body. Her voice was as soft as if she was playing a melody while talking. Slowly, we both fell in love with each other. I stayed there for about a year just to be closer to her, and then we decided to get married. It's been only a few days since we got married, and we came to Los Angeles for a honeymoon trip, but as soon as we got married, I started to notice changes in her behavior. It started to feel like she was a completely different person. When we were having romantic moments, she would space out, and sometimes it would feel like she was trying to recognize me. One day when I woke up, I found that she was not there. I called her, but she did not respond. And when even after 2 days she did not return, I started to lose my mind because I was unable to imagine her not being there with me. All kinds of scenarios started to cross my mind. I thought, what if she ran away from me? But she came willingly with me after marrying, and she looked so happy that we would be together forever. So what could have happened? Did someone abduct her? but she slept right beside me. I would have noticed if someone had broken into our room. All of these thoughts were taking over my mind, and I started to lose my senses. The last conclusion I came up with was that she had run away from me because of her changed behavior patterns that I had noticed after our marriage. I guess she did not love me enough to imagine the rest of her life with me. I did not want to go back because I was still hoping that she would come back to me. So I rented an apartment there and started to look for her on my own. I lost my appetite completely and started to feel dizzy throughout the day. But then I thought, if something were to happen to me and then she returns, what will happen to her? So I decided to eat something. That was when I saw a Domino's pizza outlet on the side of the street. I went in and ordered a veg-loaded pizza and sat in an empty seat on the corner. As I was waiting, I heard a familiar melodious voice that I could recognize anywhere. I looked around impatiently and noticed that she was there wearing the employee uniform and talking with a customer. I immediately went near her and said, "Maria, what are you doing here?" She looked at me with a look that broke my heart. It was the look of unfamiliarity, as if she was oblivious to my existence till now. "I'm sorry, sir, but who are you, and how do you know my name?" she asked with innocence in her look, as if it was our very first time meeting. I would have fallen in love with her all over again, but this time, it was just shattering my heart into pieces. I was her husband, and she was refusing to recognize me. And it did not look like she was doing it on purpose, because I could read her expression and her eyes that she really could not remember me. I decided to win my wife back and make her remember us at every cost. So at the time, I said that maybe I just mistook her for someone else. I ordered the largest pizza on the menu and sat there looking at her for hours. She was like an angel, and I wanted her back in my arms. I hated how other men were looking at her and were trying to make advances toward her, but I felt relieved by noticing her cold responses toward them. I came again the next day and spent most of my time there ordering pizzas and just staring at her. She noticed me and came closer. "Sir, is there something wrong? Why do you keep looking at me?" she asked me with an innocent voice. I wanted to tell her it was because she was my wife and I wanted to take her away that moment. But I held my inner thoughts and said, "It's just because you're so beautiful, miss, like a delicate flower which people would want to protect." She blushed as I said that and turned her face away. She smiled lightly and returned to work. I felt like I was reliving those moments when we first fell in love, so I decided to do the same and make her fall in love again. So I started to come to Domino's Pizza every day and would look at her work for hours. She started to have small talks with me, and I could not help but notice her being flustered around me, which made me feel a bit relieved. Slowly, our small talk turned into long conversations, and we started to hang out. One day I asked her out, and we started to date. I was too eager to make her my wife again, so within 3 weeks of our relationship, I proposed to her. She was blushing through her ears like the first time when she said yes to me, and we decided to get married right there in Los Angeles. As soon as our marriage ceremony ended, I decided to take her home. We flew from Los Angeles to New York and finally reached our home. The thing that was making me more nervous was that her behavior was starting to change just like before. I was always scared and was always aware of her presence, and if she left my side even for a minute, I started to feel anxious. I couldn't even sleep properly, and one day, it happened. She was gone once again. I could not understand what was happening, so the first thing I did while looking for her was that I contacted every good doctor to know about her condition, but they all told me different things and that they needed to see the patient to know the exact cause. After looking for days, I went to a bar to drink, and when I was drinking, I could not stop my tears from flowing. That was when a woman came and asked me what had happened. I was so drunk that I told her everything. She held my hands and then released them in a sudden response. The love of your life is cursed. Someone had put her in a loop that triggers her as soon as she gets married. You need to get away from her life if you want to break this loop. Stop looking for her. She started to leave after saying these things. I called out multiple times, but she didn't turn back and left. "Who are you calling, sir?" the man serving the drinks asked me. "The lady who was just sitting here beside me." As I said this, the man looked at me with disbelief and said, "Sorry, sir, but no one was here. You've been drinking alone for almost an hour and a half." I was surprised and frightened by what he had just said, and that's when I remembered what she said about my wife. I exited the bar and went to my apartment. "What's your order, sir?" she said, looking at me standing near the counter. She was wearing the uniform of Domino's Pizza and was smiling at me politely in an official manner. After looking for her in every Domino's Pizza outlet possible, I finally found her again. I guess that woman was right. She's stuck in a loop, and I loved her too much to let her stay alone. So I decided to live in this loop with her, together.
Creaking of the swing. It was the month of October. The air was crisp and Halloween was just around the corner. My friends and I had gathered in a circle, huddled around a fire, sharing stories of the supernatural. As we took turns telling our tales, I was reminded of a terrifying experience that had happened to me just a year prior. At the time, my family and I lived in a house in San Antonio, surrounded by dense woods. While I had experienced multiple jump scares in the past, they were always easily explainable. Perhaps it was the outline of trees in the dark that had appeared to take on a sinister shape, or the glowing eyes of a wild animal that had sent shivers down my spine. However, on this particular night, something felt different. As I recounted the experience to my friends, I realized that I had never fully shared the details with anyone before. The memory was still fresh in my mind, and as I spoke, I transported myself back to that eerie night. It was a calm and quiet weekend evening, and as I didn't have to worry about going to school the next day, I decided to spend my free time watching my favorite cartoon program. The TV was on, and I was lying comfortably on the living room couch, fully immersed in the show. The episode was about to end, and I started feeling drowsy, but I was determined to watch it till the end. Just then, I heard a creaking sound coming from outside the house. It was unmistakably the sound of the old swing on our porch. The swing was so old and rusty that nobody ever used it, which made me feel a bit nervous. The sound of the swing moving back and forth continued, making me increasingly scared, as I wondered who could be causing it. I decided to gather the courage to investigate the noise source. Slowly, I got up from the couch and started to creep towards the living room's bay windows. I peeked through the windows, trying to get a glimpse of the porch. Fear and anticipation were overwhelming as I tried to figure out what was causing the swing to move. It was a moonless night, and I could barely see anything. But a faint outline of a dark figure sitting on the swing was visible. The swing area was not illuminated, so I couldn't make out who it was. The person was leaning on the swing and gazing up at the sky. I squinted my eyes to take a closer look, and noticed the silhouette of long dark hair, making me think it must be a woman. A sudden feeling of unease washed over me as I stared in her direction. As I watched her, I noticed she was holding something in her hand, but I couldn't tell what it was. Suddenly, the swing stopped, and the woman sat up straight before, standing up with a sudden jolt and turning her head towards me. She was wearing a nightgown, and the object in her hand was a kitchen knife laced with blood. As I gazed into her eyes, I couldn't help but notice the intense gleam that emanated from them. It was almost as if they were reflecting a light source, but there was no light in the area. As I took a closer look at her, I realized that I had never felt such an overwhelming fear in my entire life. Every fiber of my being told me something was wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in grave danger. My body was consumed with fear as I witnessed something terrifying. I attempted to scream, but my voice was stifled by the fear that gripped me. Without a second thought, I bolted towards my mother, who was nearby. My heart pounded as I tried to communicate what I had just seen. However, my attempts to speak were fruitless, and the only word I could muster was porch. My mom noticed the panic in my eyes and tried to soothe me while asking what was wrong. Despite all my efforts, I couldn't articulate the details of what I had just witnessed. Sweat poured down my face, and I frantically pointed toward the door. Finally, my mother comprehended that something was wrong and rushed to investigate. Mom walked to the front door, and I followed her, fearing she could get in danger. As we reached the door, I held my breath when she opened it, but it was strange that nothing was there. Her eyes scanned the area for a few minutes, but I couldn't see anything. The creepy woman wasn't there, almost as if she had never existed. My mom kept asking me what it was and why I was so panicked, but I just stood there frozen, staring at our porch swing. Eventually, Mom closed the door, took me to the kitchen, and handed me water to calm down. When I was finally able to speak, I tried telling her, but it wasn't due to my voice that I couldn't. Instead, I doubted myself, thinking what I saw was my overactive imagination. Mom didn't ask me anything again, letting me feel at ease until I was ready to tell her myself. It had been nearly 2 hours since we first noticed Father's absence, and my mother and I were still sitting in the living room, anxiously awaiting his return. When we finally heard the sound of the front door opening, we both looked up eagerly, hoping to see his familiar face. However, the expression that greeted us was far from what we had expected. Father looked troubled and preoccupied, and it was clear that something was bothering him deeply. As my mother got up to take his coat, she asked him if everything was all right, but he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at us briefly and took a deep breath before speaking. "There has been a murder in the neighborhood." The image of that woman holding a knife flashed as those words entered my ears.
I used to love Domino's Pizza a lot, but after an incident that happened last year, I never eat pizza anymore. My name is Emily, and I'm a forensic scientist. I work with the police in New York City. My job is to investigate and find the culprit based on evidence found at the crime scene. Every Sunday, I used to go to Domino's Pizza with my 9-year-old daughter, Mia. Mia loved Domino's Pizza more than my cooking. One day, a man named Harrison Smith, who lived near my neighborhood, was brutally murdered by strangling. I was assigned to investigate that case. During the investigation, we found out that the man had already died from poisoning. His wife, Emma Smith, was a suspect in the murder case. She was an employee of Domino's Pizza. Emma Smith was a beautiful woman. She had blue eyes and dark hair. Their daughter Nina was Mia's friend. They used to go to the same school. One day when I went to pick Mia up from school, I found out that Mia had been skipping school for a week, but I used to send her to school every day. I started to grow anxious and worried about my daughter. I looked for her everywhere, but I couldn't find her. It was ironic that I was able to find criminals by using a single strand of hair, but not my daughter. I didn't know where to look, so I went straight to Emma Smith's house. When I reached there, I hesitated to go inside the house first, but since I was already there, I pressed the doorbell button. After a few seconds, Emma Smith opened the door. She was cheerful for someone whose husband died only 2 weeks ago. I asked her if Mia came to play with her daughter. She told me they were playing in the attic. I didn't ask her anything else and went straight to the attic. Since I was investigating Harrison Smith's murder, I had already seen their house and knew where the attic was. Mia heard my voice and tried to hide, but I found her and scolded her for skipping school. Then I took her home. Mia didn't say anything on our way home. After that, Mia's behavior started to change. Mia used to be cheerful and naughty, but after that day, she stopped talking. She didn't even eat properly. I told my husband everything and asked him to talk to her. Mia was normal with my husband. He told me there was nothing to worry about. She was totally fine. Mia was growing up, so I thought that was a phase and it will pass. But it didn't. It only became worse. After a week, Mia completely stopped talking, and even when we went to Domino's Pizza, she refused to eat anything. So I took Mia to a doctor. The doctor said Mia is probably traumatized by something, and she wouldn't open up to the doctor. Mia was getting sick, and the case I was working on kept getting complicated, and there were no clues on how to solve either of the problems. I didn't know what to do anymore. Slowly, Mia started to become normal, and I found the breakthrough. Emma Stone was pleading to the court to return her husband's body so that she could have a funeral for Harrison. After the complete autopsy and investigation, we found out that Harrison died the night before his wife called 911 and told them her husband was dead. The contents of Harrison's digestive tract were pizza, beer, and poison. As per suspicion, it was Emma after all. Emma was arrested for the murder of her husband, Harrison Smith. She quietly confessed to the police. After Emma's arrest, we took Nina in until her next legal guardian was decided by the court. When Nina came to live with us, she was very quiet and refused to eat anything, just like Mia. I thought it was because she recently lost her parents, but it was not the case. The next day, I took both Mia and Nina to their school and told their teacher to keep an eye on them. After 3 days, Nina came home with a black eye and a broken nose. I asked her what happened. She didn't talk to me. So I asked Mia, and she told me that some kids bullied Nina and called her a murder's daughter. That's when she got into a fight with them and got beaten. I thought I should lighten up her mood, so I took Nina and Mia to Domino's Pizza. After I reached there, I parked my car and took Mia and Nina inside. I asked them what they would like to order. Nina was quiet, but Mia told me what she likes to eat, so I went ahead and placed the order. After 20 minutes, my order was ready, and when I brought the pizza to the table, Nina fainted after saying something. I couldn't hear it properly. I took her to a hospital, and she got treatment there. After regaining consciousness, when I asked what happened, she began to cry and told me that her father died because of eating pizza. I gave her water and calmed her down, and then asked her to tell me the whole story. She told me that her father used to drink and then beat her mother. Nina heard her mother on the phone that Emma had decided to attempt suicide and bought poison, but she couldn't because of Nina. Emma used to bring leftover pizzas after her shift was over at Domino's Pizza. Nina used to share that with Mia every day at school. One day, when she came home late with leftover pizza, Harris's husband was already drunk and started beating her badly. He raped his wife, and he ate all the leftover pizza. The cycle kept going on for months, until one day, when Harrison was beating Emma, and Nina sneaked into the kitchen and found the poison bottle. She opened the Domino's pizza box and put the poison on the pizza, then added oregano. After beating, Emma Harrison took pizza boxes into his room and ate the pizza. When the morning came and Harrison didn't wake up, Emma thought that he passed out from drinking. She took Nina to school and went to work. When Nina went to school, She asked Mia to go home with her and told her everything about her father. Mia and Nina went there together and found Harrison dead. Nina called her mother, Emma. When Emma came home, she saw her husband's dead body, and Nina told her everything about how she put poison in the pizza. Emma, to save Nina, took a wire and strangled Harrison to make it look like he died by strangling. Nina and Mia got traumatized after witnessing that. After hearing Nina's story, I understood what was going on, but I kept quiet, and I didn't tell the police about what happened. I told Nina and Mia to never talk about that to anyone.
It was around the time when I first started working as an Uber driver. The job was pretty good and everything until one night when I picked up these girls from a club. That night, after dropping a customer at his destination, I got a ride request from a nearby nightclub, so I accepted it and drove there. When I reached the pickup location, I noticed 3 hot girls dressed up in a revealing and sexy attire. One of them was kissing a stud-looking dude, and one of them was trying to hold the third one who seemed extremely drunk. Those 2 got in as soon as they noticed the cab, while we waited for the third one to finish her long, never-ending makeout session. "Riley, are you coming?" the second girl called out while she pointed her finger, telling her to wait 2 minutes. I waited for almost 15 minutes while she finished her kiss and came towards the cab. She opened the left door and got in. For some reason, the girl looked pissed, which soon after I got to know why. How could you do that with Betty's boyfriend while she's passed out? Betty thinks of you as her best friend. She said that, and I understood what was going on. "Oh, come on, Caroline, don't try to act like a saint. She will never find out if she just keeps her mouth shut." Riley replied while touching up her makeup. "So, that player of a guy was this passed out hot girlfriend's boyfriend. What poor luck she has that her boyfriend was cheating on her best friend." I'd always heard about shit like this happening to people's lives, but I never witnessed it. And there I was, witnessing it during my work hours, through my customers. You're saying this because you already know I would never tell her. And Peter had already hurt her enough. I don't want her to get hurt more by knowing that her best friend is also betraying her behind her back. She said that while gritting her teeth, and instead of feeling ashamed, Riley started laughing. "Chill out, girl. You let the heat get to you sometimes." She caressed her cheeks while saying that, and she took in her anger. "Let's just silently get to the apartment without making another sound." I took out her phone and started going through it after saying that. "You know what? Driver, stop the car. I'm going to teach Caroline here how to let off the steam." As she instructed, I stopped the car. "Are you mad or what? Driver, don't listen to her and continue driving." I listened to her instructions as well and started the car back again. At the same time, the third girl, Betty, opened her eyes while moaning. She still looked pretty drunk. But before she could act or fall asleep again, Riley held her and started kissing her. "What do you think you're doing, Riley?" She pulled them apart while Betty's drunk, gorgeous eyes were open in shock for a few seconds before passing out again. Her boyfriend's a terrible kisser, so I'm letting her experience a good kiss for once. She said while laughing out loud. Even I, who wasn't supposed to care about what was going on in the passenger seats, was feeling disgusted by that girl. After that, they kept arguing the entire way. More like Caroline was the one arguing while Riley was passing weird remarks and laughing. As we reached the destination, Riley and Caroline got off while Riley instructed me to drop Betty at the address she provided me. "I know I should drop you off at your house, but my stepmom's going to chew my head off if I'm there another minute late," she said to her and then went off. I started driving to the address she gave me. As I was driving, I heard a sniffling sound from the back seat. I turned to see, and she was awake and crying. I could not ignore it and parked the car on the side and asked her if she needed anything. "I know you must be thinking I'm some pathetic girl after hearing everything." I looked at her with a shocked expression while she continued. "Yes, I heard everything. I knew about it long before tonight." After saying that, she started crying even louder. I didn't know what to do, so I took out a water bottle and passed it in her direction. She looked into my eyes for the first time and said, "You're handsome." Her compliment made me blush, but then she clumsily climbed over to the front seat next to mine and leaned over for a kiss. Even though I found her sexy and attractive from the start, but still kissing a girl in the drunken state seemed a bit odd, so I hesitated a bit, by which she thought I wasn't interested. But she pulled away saying, Sorry if you don't want to." While she was saying that, her drunken eyes blinked in an odd manner which I found extremely sexy and irresistible. So I grabbed her by her hair and started kissing her. When I was kissing her, I kept thinking, why would anyone ever cheat on a girl as amazing as her? And that her lips were as soft as vanilla. After the dose of that drug, I got carried away and ended up having sex with her in the car. She fell asleep in the car after that, and even though I wanted to have more of her, I still drove to the address her friend gave me to drop her off. After dropping her off, I went back to my apartment and could not stop thinking about her. The next day, as I was getting ready for my job, my boss called and told me that I was fired because I broke the company policy. I couldn't believe that she reported me after she was the one that came home to me first. I'm remembering this today because I got an anonymous text saying, "I'm sorry my friend did that. Can I make it up to you?" I didn't want anything to do with her, so I blocked the number and started to get ready for my new job.
I don't care. Everyone is coming on the official trip, and whoever doesn't want to come is off the team, team leader Eric announced. We looked at him with annoyance because he always said this. He doesn't care about the opinions of the rest of the team. He simply decides on his own, takes permission from the higher-ups, and says that the team wants this, the team wants that, and simply just informs us that we have to do this. "I wonder who wants to stay on this team," I whispered, which was overheard by the person sitting next to me, Carlos, and he tried to control his laughter. "Is there anything you would like to say, Carlos?" The team leader noticed him laughing and asked. "Yes, why don't we all have a pre-trip overnight party on our floor?" he suggested, while trying to steal his eyes away from me because I was glaring at him for giving him ideas. "What an amazing idea, Carlos. Okay, everyone, tomorrow you will all bring your PJs to the office because we will be drinking all night, and no excuse for anyone." As he announced this, I sneakily smacked Carlos when no one was looking. Everyone else nodded their heads in agreement because they had no other choice. After the shift ended, I grabbed Carlos's hand and pulled him into the smoking area. "Are you mad or what? You know how he is, and I have zero alcohol tolerance, right? Why the hell would you suggest such a thing?" I smacked his back 3 times while saying this angrily, but he continued smiling. "I just wanted to see your reaction, and how else would I be able to see your angry bird side?" He laughed and said, which made me even angrier, and I started punching and kicking him, but he continued laughing. I got annoyed and stomped out of there. I was frustrated that the only days we get to rest after working like a horse were supposed to be wasted on overnight parties or some stupid office trip. The next morning, I saw the message in the team group that was sent by Eric that everyone was supposed to bring their luggage along with the PJs for the trip because we would head directly from there. He was just getting more and more annoying, I thought, and threw myself on the bed again. After a while, I got up and started packing my things half-heartedly. When I was done, I called Carlos, and even though I was still angry with him, he was still my best friend, and I could always kill him later. "Hello, my angry bird." He said this to annoy me on purpose, but I wasn't going to show him my annoyance yet. "You're coming to pick me up, understood?" I said. "This doesn't sound like a request to me," he said in a playful tone, "because this is an order, not a request. Now, be here within half an hour. I'll be waiting." I hung up after saying that. When I was ready, I exited my house and locked it. I checked the time, and 3 minutes remained for the time limit I gave Carlos. That was when I saw his car stopping in front of the front gate. I knew he would come, because no matter how annoying he was still a good friend to me. He came out and walked toward me. "You know the trip is only for 3 days, right?" he asked, looking at my suitcase. "Don't worry, the suitcase is half empty. I just didn't have any other ones, so I took this," I said while handing him my suitcase, and he acted as if it was too heavy for him. I smacked his head for that reaction, and he started laughing. He put the suitcase in the car, and we got in after that. We drove to the office and saw the team leader standing near the parking area. His expression changed as soon as he saw us together. He always does this. He makes it so obvious that he is interested in me to the point that it makes me uncomfortable. We headed inside the office, and after putting our suitcase and bags in a safe place, we started working. In the evening, the team leader came with the bottles of alcohol in his hands and placed them in the kitchen. After that, he called us, saying that we should start the party. I knew that he was going to try to force me to drink, so I made Carlo drink at my place because it was all his stupid idea anyway. We played multiple games and continued drinking as a result, getting extremely drunk. I couldn't spot Carlos for a while, and that was when the team leader came toward me with a glass in his hand and started forcing me to drink. "You are the only one who did not drink properly, so you have to drink from my hands." I refused him, but he kept insisting. He looked pretty drunk because he had started to grab my hands and I kept pulling them away from him. I tried to get away from him, but this time he grabbed my waist and pulled me closer. He forcefully put the glass in my mouth and made me drink. That was when Carlos came and pushed him away from me. "Are you okay?" That was the first thing he asked. He looked at my eyes, which were torn up, and it made him angry. He grabbed Eric by his collar and punched him in the face. Eric was so drunk that he passed out in that one punch. The next morning, everyone woke up completely hungover and blacked out from last night. I asked Carlos not to make this into an issue and let him be this time. That was when the team leader received a call from the director saying that the trip had been canceled because some essential data and files were stolen from the department. He was immediately called to the meeting, and since he was so hungover, he had no idea what was going on. The next day, the team leader came and gathered his things because he was fired from his position. As he was going, he glared at me and Carlos. I could not understand the entire situation, so I looked over at Carlos in confusion and saw him smiling, which made me doubtful about him. He turned his face to me and winked, which made me understand what he was doing all along. Finally, this buffoon did something good. I smiled back and went back to work.
My missing crush. "What happened to your online store, Emma?" I asked. "Nothing much. I have set it up, but promoting it is an issue," she replied with a tired voice. "But I thought you said you had enough money for that," I said again, reminding her of this. "Yes, that was when I did not know how much it was going to cost. Promotional stuff is more expensive than I thought." She again looked at me with tired eyes, and that's when I got an idea. "Why don't you try self-promoting? I can help you with that," I suggested. "What? Will you? Really?" She held my hand and asked me while looking into my eyes. "That's what I just said," I said, and it made her happy. We decided to come up with a few strategies to do the self-promotion and then meet the next day at a coffee shop near my office. The next day after work, I got earlier at the coffee shop and waited for Emma to show up. About 15 minutes later, she walked to the table I was at and sat across me. She looked pretty in the green dress that she was wearing. Anyway, as we were sipping our coffees, we started to discuss just what we would be doing to self-promote this thing. I suggested we started by sending out messages to everyone we know and use social media to promote the store, since social media could attract most of the customers into visiting Emma's website. Facebook was my primary suggestion because it is the biggest platform that has the largest audience among other social media platforms. I had to set up a page and start promoting the store. I told her not to worry too much about it, for I would take care of setting up the pages and everything that they needed. After finishing up the discussion and the coffee, I asked to drop her home, and she agreed to. For those of you who are wondering about me, my name is Eden Miller. Emma and I have been childhood friends, and I've always had a crush on her. But she only saw me as a friend and nothing more. I did not want to ruin our relationship, so I never told her how I felt. We graduated from the same high school, and after that, Emma got into fashion design in college, while I chose business management. During the second year of college, she got into her first relationship, which made me feel devastated, but to my relief, they broke up within a few months. Emma had always been working part-time jobs even when we were in high school and saving up money, and after graduating from college, she decided to open up her online clothing store. Even though I told her that I would help her financially if she needed it, she never asked for my help. So it was finally my chance to prove myself to her. After dropping Emma off at her house, I went to my apartment, and despite my busy schedule, I started working on the Facebook page for her online store. I asked all my friends to spread the word about the store, and they were pretty nice to do that. After setting up the page, I started uploading frequent posts regarding the online store, products, and things of the sort. A week went by, and the response was slow, but I was positive that it would increase over time. I guess Emma was too eager for it to get successful. She called me one day and told me that as she was uploading some stories related to her store, she got a message on Facebook from a stranger. The stranger told Emma that he could help the store become a success in no time and asked her to meet somewhere for further discussion. I told her that there are many such scams on Facebook, so be careful, and despite my asking her to reveal the address where he asked to meet her, she did not tell me about it. Emma, who used to tell me every little detail of whatever she was up to, was not telling me something as important as this. It made me feel anxious for some reason. I felt that something was definitely off about this. I tried contacting her, but she turned her phone off, which made me even more worried. As time was passing, I started feeling this tightness in my chest because her number was still off. I drove to her house and found it locked. I started pacing back and forth in front of her house waiting for her. Hours passed, and the darkness of the night had started to spread, but there was still no sign of her. I sat in front of her house all night long and was so worried that I started to cry because her phone was still off and I had no idea where she was. The next morning, the very first thing I did was file a missing person report for her. And after that, I asked one of my friends who was a hacker to hack Emma's Facebook, ID, and track the person account who had sent the message. He called me back 4 hours later and informed me that the account Emma was talking to was a fake one. I got even more worried and started to panic. Police began the search and investigation, but they had no clues to find Emma. It was like the man did not leave any traces behind to follow. 2 more days passed, and there was still no sign of her. And that was when my hacker friend called and informed me that there has been a new post made by Emma on her Facebook account. He sent me the picture, and it was Emma wearing a blue dress and smiling, which I could tell was forced because after crushing on her for so long, I could tell when she would be smiling truly or when she gave us a fake smile. After looking at this picture very carefully and closely, it seemed that she had bruises on her neck, which were covered up with makeup, and her eyes looked puffy as well. I zoomed in on the picture and tried to recognize the surrounding. It seemed like a nightclub in Western Town. I updated the police about the details and headed to the nightclub. The officers reached there before me and asked about the girl in the picture. The employees denied seeing her. As we were asking around, one of the employees admitted to seeing her with a man. They requested CCTV footage, and in the footage, it could be seen that a man came in with her. But they left just after taking a picture of her. Emma looked like she was getting forced into doing all that, and the way she was walking seemed weird. The guy looked somewhat familiar to me, I just couldn't quite put my finger on it. As I tried remembering the guy, something in my mind clicked, and I remember that Emma showed me a picture of this guy when she was in college. He was her ex-boyfriend, Derek. I guess I never told you why Emma broke up with him. It was because he was manipulating her. He was aggressive, and he started to raise hands on her while making up his assumptions. Anyway, I told officers about the guy, and they immediately went and started tracking his whereabouts. He was soon arrested in his house, and the interrogation started. He tried to act as if he did not know anything about it, and then he told the officers that he hadn't even seen Emma for years. But when they told him that they know that he had kidnapped and hidden her somewhere against her will, he finally opened his mouth. Emma was found locked in one of the warehouses that was owned by him, and she was in a terrible state. He used to beat her, rape her, and do horrible things to her, which made her traumatized. She was sent to the hospital for treatment and recovery, while Derek was locked up in prison, and trials were held against them after that. I don't know how she managed to endure all these tortures and sufferings, but now that she was found, I promised myself that I would never let anything happen to her again. My mom. I was scrolling through social media when I got a notification from Facebook. Someone had tagged me in a post. When I opened to check, there seemed to be an issue, and since then, Facebook on my phone just kept stopping. I could not see what the post was. I forgot about it, and afterwards, I did not think to check again. As I was on my bed, scrolling through my phone, my mom called me for dinner. I was scared of her, so I stood up from the bed and immediately went downstairs to the dining room. My siblings had already reached the table and were sitting in their seats in complete silence, except for Finn, who wasn't there. I went ahead and took my seat as well. Mom had made potato pie for dinner, and it was a dish she made when she was extremely annoyed or angry at something. I did not dare to speak or talk, so I followed her command, and we all started to eat. My name is Kara Dominic. I'm a 16-year-old girl, the eldest among our 4 siblings. Mom had me with her first boyfriend when she was just a teenager. 2 years younger than me was Finn, who was conceived through a sexual act of crime by her uncle. She ran away from home after that and raised me and Finn in Kentucky. And that was when she met a man and fell in love with him. 4 years later, when she was pregnant with Abigail and Adriel, she found out that the man was cheating on her with a different woman. She cut all ties with him, but after the birth of my twin siblings, she started having anger issues. At first, she managed to put the anger under control, but slowly it went out of control, and she started raising her hands at Finn. I was the second victim of her beating a month after she started beating Finn. One day when we saw that Mom was angry over the twins for something and was about to beat them, I went ahead and took blame for it on myself. The twins had broken a flower vase that Mom used to treasure, but when asked, they started lying, so Mom started to get angry, and that was when I saw them. I went ahead and told her that it was accidentally broken by me. She looked at me with anger and started punching me in the face, along with cursing me. When she was done hitting me, I went to my room and started to cry. After I was done cleaning the wounds, I went to my bed and started scrolling through Facebook. Finn and I were already facing abuse, but I did not want my 10-year-old brother and sister to go through the same thing. So after that, whenever something like that happened, either Finn or I stepped up to take the punishment instead of them. The extent of those punishments kept increasing. She started to pour hot water on us with anger. She kept punching us until we passed out, and even starved us on a measure of punishment. Anyway, as we were silently eating, I was thinking about Finn. It was not like him to do that, and all I could think about was that God had mercy on him and spare him from Mom's anger. For some reason, the twins looked terrified, as if they'd seen a ghost or something. Mom was quiet the entire time and did not speak a word, nor did she scold us for anything. Which was weird because she would always keep cursing us throughout lunch and dinner. Still, I was a bit relieved to be in a peaceful environment for once, so after finishing up my meal, I went directly to my room. I was still unable to open Facebook as it kept stopping. That morning, when I went to the kitchen to get something to eat, my mom scolded me again and told me that we were banned from entering the kitchen ever again. It was a bit weird, but I still followed her orders because they never made sense to me anyway. More than a week went by and Phil still hadn't gotten back from wherever he'd gone. One thing that was even more surprising was that Mom hadn't mentioned his name, not even once in those past days, even though there was a chance that he'd run away from all the torture and punishment. But still, I started to feel worried about him. Just like this, 2 months passed by. Mom's punishments were still extreme as ever. After Finn was gone, I wasn't able to protect the twins as before, and they would also start to get their own beatings occasionally. One night when I was scrolling through Facebook and looking at tagged photos, I saw one photo of the refrigerator which was taken in the kitchen. I could not understand who tagged me in this photo and how in the hell did they take this. No one in the house had a phone besides Mom and me, so no one else could do that. One night when I was sleeping, I heard the twins screaming along with Mom's voice, who was cursing them in the same way that she had poured hot water over me and kicked and punched me. So I did not have enough courage to go ahead and get punishment for them this time, even though I was feeling guilty from hearing them cry and beg for mercy. I still stayed curled up in my bed while whimpering. The next morning, the first thing I saw was Adriel's swelled up face, but Abigail was nowhere to be seen. Adriel was silent, and he seemed traumatized, and I thought that it must be because of the beating from last night. The twins' bedroom was next to Mom's, and I was thinking that Abigail must be in her room. I left the matter just like that. And so the following evening, when my mom wasn't home, I thought of sneakily going to the kitchen and checking the refrigerator, because the post from earlier was still lingering on my mind. When I opened the refrigerator, I fell backwards from what I had just seen. Abigail's dead body was pulled over Finn's body. I closed the refrigerator and ran to Adriel's room. I took him and ran out of the house and just kept running until we reached the police station. After reporting the crime, officers searched the house and found the bodies of my 2 siblings. My mom was also arrested the moment she stepped foot into the house. As the trial began, she admitted to killing Finn and Abigail and then putting them into the refrigerator. The reason she gave for killing Finn was that he was growing up. He started to look more and more like his rapist father, which triggered her trauma again and again. She started to see her abuser in Finn and eventually ended up killing him. She said that she did not mean to kill Abigail, but as she was beating them, Abigail fell unconscious and never woke up. She was finally sentenced to 120 years of prison for no possible parole for the crimes of domestic violence on all of her children, and then the murder of 2 of them. I still have no clue about the person who posted that picture on Facebook and then tagged, or how they even took it in the first place. But I'm glad that they did. My only regret is that I could not see it in the day that Finn went missing, because if I did, I could have saved my sister Abigail from that horrible fate. It was last year when I was working at Walmart as a cashier. Like some other outlets, its opening and closing time was 7 in the morning to 11:30 p.m. This Walmart was a neighborhood market, so there was an average of 30 to 45 employees working there. But something happened on a particular day that makes me avoid Walmart altogether. It was around 11 p.m. and my shift just ended, but there were these last 5 customers who I thought I would take off after I finished running them up. It took around 15 to 25 minutes for me to finish it. Before going home, I remembered that there were a few things that I had to buy for myself, so I thought I should take them from there. I went to the grocery store department and started picking things up for me, and as I was done, I went to the counter to ring them up for myself. For some reason, when I turned around, there was no one in sight, not even a single employee. The store's environment had changed as well. I don't know if it was because of the time or because there was just no one around, but it started giving off a spine-chilling vibe. I shook my head and started humming a Taylor Swift song in my mind. I'm a big fan of Taylor Swift, so whenever I'm happy, nervous, or scared, sad, or pretty much anything else, I start singing or humming her songs, which makes me feel good within minutes. I started ringing up the items for me. It was weird that despite picking up only 5 items, ringing them up was taking so long, as if it was playing on a loop. For some reason, humming the song wasn't working for me because the eerie feeling that I was having at the time just kept getting stronger. Finally, after a long 10 minutes, I was finished ringing them up, and as I was about to leave the counter, I got jump scared when a family suddenly showed up with a cart. There was a husband, a wife, and 2 little girls with them. It was inexplicable how and when they all got in here. And when did they do all the shopping, because I was certain that there was no one around until now. As I was ringing up their items, unusually, there was one item from Department 7 that was no longer available in Walmart stores. So I asked them where they got it, and the wife told me in a straight voice that she picked it up from Department 7. It was weird because I know for a fact that the outlet did not have those items in stock anymore. So how was it that they picked it up? I thought there might be one left in there by accident, which no one took notice of, even though it was unaccountable, but I still made my peace with it. I had to add the amount manually after checking it up for the item, and after that I continued ringing up the next items. They had a long list, and I could tell by the time that it was getting pretty late. While I was ringing up their items, they kept staring at me strangely without even blinking once, which was scaring me deep down. But I was trying to act normal and composed so that they not notice that I was scared of them. Another item from Department 11 that they had been stopped distributing a long time ago showed up. Now, it was just too weird to be a coincidence for something like this to happen twice. I hesitantly asked them about the item, and they gave me the same response as earlier. They got it from Department 11. For some strange reason, the item in my hand was giving off an ominous vibe, so I decided to hurry it up and check out those departments. After that, I silently finished them up and told them the total while handing out the bill. They paid for them and left. I could not stop thinking about those items, which I was sure were not available at any Walmart outlet, so I thought of checking the departments out before leaving home. The chilling vibe was getting stronger as I walked slowly to apartment 7, and when I got there, I started looking around for the particular item to be there. As I focused on finding the item, I felt the menacing aura coming from one of the bottom shelves. I went ahead to check it out. It was not just one or two of those items that had been placed accidentally. Instead, the entire middle row of the bottom shelf was filled with those items. I cannot explain to you the terrifying feeling that I was getting just by looking at them. And I did not have to check the other department to know that it would also have been the same. That was when I got another jump scare when I felt someone's hand on my shoulder. I turned to see the husband of that family standing behind me, but I was sure that they had already left. The man told me that the exit had been locked, so they could not get out of the place. I had a spare key, so I told him to wait for a while. After taking the key and my bag of groceries from the counter, I went ahead near the exit where the family was waiting for me. Even though I was scared of my pants, I kept my calm and unlocked the door. After getting out, I started locking the gate, and when I turned, they were gone. Strangely, I felt a bit relieved by that. I took my bike and headed home. I kept thinking that I would talk to the manager about those items being at the store. And the next day, the first thing I did was go to those departments and check. But it was weird that none of those items were there as last night. It's as if someone removed those items that night. I asked a few other employees, but they all disagreed about having those items at our outlet. So I went over to the manager and told him everything from last night. But after I insisted on him for a long time, he agreed to check the surveillance cameras. As we were looking at the footage, my heart started to drop when I saw that there was no one except for me there the entire time. Even the items I was ringing there. Instead, I was just standing there wringing air. It looked like I was possessed or something. We continued looking at the footage, and even when I went to check on the item, there was nothing, and no one, even when I got to the jump scared by that man. After closing the footage, everyone looked at me while I was staring at the screen all terrified. I started feeling my vision getting blurred, and then I fell unconscious. When I woke up, I was in the hospital getting an IV. Even after resigning from my position and never stepping not even a single foot at a Walmart after that day, I still get nightmares to this very day because of that incident.
Animal or monster? After spending several hours setting up the spiderweb decoration in my yard for Halloween, I was feeling both pleased with myself and eager to finish the job. As I surveyed my work, I realized that some green liquid slime was the final touch to complete the spooky scene. As I scanned the yard, I thought maybe I could add more creepiness to what I had done there. I quickly consulted my mental list of Halloween decorations needed, from spooky lights to creepy jack-o'-lanterns, and remembered that Jimmy's store was the best place to get it. Thinking of completing my decorating task, I got into my car and prepared to drive the 3 miles to Jimmy's store. However, as I started the engine, I noticed the fuel gauge was dangerously low, showing only a sliver of fuel left. Knowing that my car wouldn't make it to Jimmy's and back without running out of gas, I decided to fill up my tank quickly at the gas station just a few meters away. As I drove towards the gas station, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The fuel gauge in my car was about to be empty, and I didn't want to risk running out of gas before reaching my destination. I kept a careful eye on the gauge, watching as the needle crept closer and closer to empty. Finally, I spotted a gas station up ahead and breathed a sigh of relief. Pulling into the station, I noticed no other cars around. It was nighttime, and the silence added to the eerie atmosphere. I got out of my car and began filling up the tank, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I scanned the area looking for signs of life, but no one was in sight. The only sounds were the hum of the gas pump and the rustle of leaves in the wind. As I continued to fill up my tank, I couldn't help but feel like something was off. The minutes ticked by slowly, and the silence only grew more oppressive. It felt like an eternity before my tank was finally full. As I was about to enter my car, I noticed a small fox standing a few feet away. staring at me intently. I couldn't help but notice that she was unusually small and incredibly cute, with eyes bigger than any fox I had ever seen. I froze for a moment to take in the sight of this charming animal, but then I remembered that I had a habit of feeding stray dogs whenever I would go out, so I thought I could give her a treat too. I had some jerky treats in my car, so I took them out and threw them in her direction. The fox looked at me for a few seconds, almost as if she was about to say something, before she stepped forward, sniffed the jerky, and started eating. It was interesting that she only ate the clean ones and left the ones covered in dirt untouched. As she ate, I took out my phone and started filming her, hoping to show the video to others later. But then, something strange happened. The fox suddenly stopped eating, looked at me, and took a majestic leap inside my car. At first I was surprised, but not frightened. I thought the fox just wanted to explore my car, but as I saw the back of her head, I froze in fear. The fox had another face behind her head. It was a surreal sight that I couldn't believe my eyes. I wondered if I was hallucinating, but the second face was still there staring at me. I tried to stay calm and think rationally, but my heart was pounding, and my mind was racing with questions. If someone else were to hear my account of what happened, I'm certain they'd be convinced that I was spouting nonsense, and would say something along the lines, "What in the name of Voldemort are you talking about?" But I swear on my life that what I saw was real. The fox had two faces. At first I couldn't believe my eyes. How could a creature possibly have two faces? My mind raced for a logical explanation, and I even came up with the idea that the fox might be a product of a vanishing twin syndrome, where one twin consumes the other before birth. But as soon as I thought this, the second face disappeared before my eyes, leaving me frozen and petrified. The fox then turned towards me, and I swear its eyes were piercing through me, as if it were threatening me. I was terrified, and I felt a lump form in my throat. Suddenly, the fox leaped out of my car with the same majesty with which it had entered. Yet I couldn't help but find it creepy, as I was left shaken and disturbed. As soon as I saw the strange creature walking away, I felt my heart racing and my body tensing up. I wasted no time and quickly ran towards my car, fumbling with the keys to unlock the door. Once inside, I took a deep breath and started the engine, the sound of the car providing a small sense of safety. I glanced at the rearview mirror, making sure the creature was nowhere in sight, before stepping on the gas and speeding away, leaving the eerie scene behind. As I drove away from the gas station, I couldn't help but keep glancing in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows. Multiple questions surged through my mind. What kind of creature was that? Was it dangerous? Should I report it to someone? I pulled out my phone to watch the video I had recorded of the fox, but what I saw made my blood run cold. The video was empty. There was no sign of the fox with two faces. It was as if the creature had never been there, or I had never filmed it. As memories of that spine-chilling creature flood my mind, I ponder the plausibility of the age-old myth about the souls of the departed returning on Halloween night, and the existence of numerous other monsters that supposedly roam the earth on that day. The mere thought of it sends shivers down my spine, and I cannot help but wonder if there is any truth to these tales.
Manager, come here. There's a dead body in the restaurant's refrigerator. I just came back from a morning meeting when the waiter called out to me. I followed him into the kitchen and got terrified by what I saw. A human body was sliced into multiple pieces and stuffed in the refrigerator. Blood was dripping all over the refrigerator to the floor. The scene was giving me the creeps, and it was so horrifying to look at that I just turned away. "Whose body is this?" I asked while going outside from the kitchen. "We could not see the head in there, but still, we're guessing it's the head chef," he said, putting a handkerchief on his nose. "Close the restaurant, call the cops, and ask everyone to gather in the hall," I instructed him, and started dialing my friend Jacob's number, who is working with the FBI. "Cops will be here within 20 minutes, the waiter informed me, and went ahead toward the hall where I asked everyone to gather. "Hi man, how are you?" Jacob asked in a loud, energetic tone as soon as he picked up the call. "Not good, bro. A dead body's been found in my restaurant's refrigerator, and we don't know how it got there and whose body it is," I told him in a panicked voice as I was scared as hell, but did not let others know that. Jacob was my best friend whom I could tell anything and behaved the way I was. Otherwise, I always tried to act tough and fearless in front of others. "Did you check the CCTV footage?" He asked the most basic questions, and that's when I realized that I never asked the staff if they checked the surveillance camera because I was panicking as hell inside. "No," I replied in a quiet voice. "First of all, check the CCTV footage to find out what happened. Mostly the culprit finds a way to tamper with the surveillance, but there are cases where you can get evidence through the footage," he explained to me in a calm and composed tone. "Okay, I'll check it right away," I said, and he told me to call him after that. I went to the hall to ask the staff about the surveillance footage and where they were when all this happened. "Okay everyone, please stay calm. Cops are on their way, and before they question you regarding this, I want to know where you were when all this happened," I asked in a harsh tone. "We don't know because everything was normal when we left last night." It was the sous chef who replied first to my question, while others just nodded in agreement to what he just said. "What about this morning?" I asked. "I was the one who came in first this morning for cleaning. I entered the kitchen for cleaning and fainted as soon as I opened the refrigerator." It was the cleaning lady. "Yes, and when I came in, I saw her passed out on the floor and looked over to the refrigerator to find out this horrifying scene." It was the sous chef again. "Did any of you check the CCTV yet?" I asked while looking at them, but everyone just went silent. "No, we haven't yet," the waiter who informed me about this earlier said in a faded tone. That's when we heard the sound of the police siren. "It's going to be okay, guys. Don't panic. No one will get into any trouble as long as you are not involved in the crime," I said calmly to them, but I felt the environment getting weirdly silent. The cops asked us the same questions about the CCTV footage, and while two of them went ahead to check the footage, one of them started to ask us questions about our whereabouts last night and other things related to the crime. The CCTV footage was not there, and it seems someone shut them off just after the sous chef left, as if they knew the time when he will be leaving. Police started their investigation right away, while I called Jacob and informed him about this. "Sous chef is involved in this, and one thing is for sure, that he will not be the only one who did it." He said this as soon as I finished telling him about the situation. I was surprised to see how soon he was able to figure this out without even being present at the crime scene. Guess being an FBI agent has its gifts. "You mean another employee was involved in the crime?" I said in a nervous tone, which he guessed was because of me getting scared. "Yes, and don't worry, bro. You can count on me with this. I'm on the case right now, but I'll still try to help you as much as I can." His words calmed me down a bit. Was there someone the sous chef or anyone else resented, or any recent breakout between anyone within the staff? He asked me in a professional tone, which made me admire him even more. "I don't think so. Wait, I think it could be the executive chef," I said while remembering someone. "And why do you think that? Was there some sort of tension going on between them?" Jacob asked. "No, but you know Martin has been working for our restaurant for the past 5 years and always wanted to be the executive chef. But when I hired Carlos as the executive chef and appointed him as the sous chef, he was not happy about it. And the executive chef is the only one absent today." I told him about the time when I first hired the executive chef about 5 months ago. Was there anyone else who looked unhappy from the executive chef? He asked me again, and I understood that he was sure about someone else being involved in this, but no matter how hard I tried to think, I could not come up with anyone who may have any personal issues with them. Well, he was a bit strict, and everyone else was always on the edge with him in the kitchen, but they liked him as a person because he may have been a strict chef, but he was a pretty decent and nice fellow. Okay, let's try to think from another way. Was there anyone close to Martin, close enough to murder him? Try to think of anything that can relate to him. As he asked me, there was one scene and a name that came to my mind. Joy. It could be her. She works in the maintenance department. There was one time when I wanted to grab some leftover food from the restaurant's kitchen after closing time and walked in on them having sex. The next day, when I thought I should help them and delete the surveillance footage, but to my surprise, it was already erased. I did not think of it at the moment, but it could be her this time as well, I said. My work here is done, my friend. Go ahead and give this testimony to the police, and they will do the rest themselves. And if you still need my help, feel free to call and ask me. I'll try to come there as soon as I get free from this project myself. He disconnected the call after saying this, and I dialed the officer's number who was in charge of this case and told him everything related to the sous chef and the executive chef. The next day, I got the news that Martin and Joy were on the run. So I called Jacob immediately and told him about this. I guess the police may have found some evidence against them, and your testimony may have just confirmed it. Don't worry, they will get caught. As he said that, I looked up at the sky and sighed. I have been working with Starbucks as a barista for the past few years. The pay is good and everything, but the customers sometimes make it difficult because of their overly complicated orders. We work hard to keep up with their crazy customized and complicated orders, so the least they could do was accept it without being bitchy about it. So dealing with that kind of rude customers has always been too much of a hassle. You would not believe it, but there are all kinds of customers we have to deal with. Well, it's not always the case though. Some customers are pretty nice too. There was this one incident that almost made me lose my job. It was one day when I reached earlier than usual and started to get ready for work. I drained the coffee urns, brewed the coffee, unwrapped the pastries, got the espresso machine warmed up, etc. After that, the customers started to arrive, and here we go. It's just got busier than usual. That was when I heard Jenny trying to explain something to a customer while he was being extremely rude to her. I went there and asked about the situation, and the customer turned toward me and started shouting at me. He was saying something really weird, that his robot died because of Starbucks coffee. What the hell? Is this man psycho or what? Someone said among customers, and I was thinking the same thing. Who puts coffee over robots, and how are we to blame for that? I asked Jenny, and she told me that this man came a day earlier and made the most complicated order ever, which she struggled with for about half an hour, and while leaving, he said rude things to her. And today, he just came directly and started arguing. Starbucks has a policy that employees are never supposed to be rude to customers no matter the circumstances, so we had no choice but to bear with him. We apologized to him, thinking that he must be a mental patient or something, and gave him a free coffee as an apology. But it continued, and he started coming regularly and making a fuss over every little thing. We told our manager about it, and he said that we don't have to listen to his unreasonable requests if that is completely unrelated to our policy. So as we did that, that weird man started to do some creepy things. It started to happen from the day he stopped coming to the outlet. We were closing when Jenny saw a dead rat lying around in front of the gate. A red ribbon was wrapped around it, and there was a note over it that said, "You will regret it." It crept us out. I threw the rat in the trash can and calmed others, saying it must be a prank or something. The next day, 2 dead rats were lying around at the same time and place, so I quietly picked them up and threw them in the trash can before anyone else could see them, because I knew they would start saying superstitious things. That rude customer came to my mind, but I shook the thought, thinking, why would he do something like this? And I should not just doubt someone like that. But instead of stopping, it started to increase. The number of dead rats doubled day by day, and people around also started to freak out. It was a good thing that it happened only during closing time, otherwise it could affect the reputation of the place. I checked the CCTV footage so that I could see who was pulling all these nasty pranks, but to my surprise, I could not find anything. Those rats were also put in the blind spot of the surveillance camera so that one could not tell if they were there or not. The day after I checked the surveillance camera, that weird man came again and ordered the most complicated coffee, but I asked Jenny to let me handle that. I prepared his order and handed it to him. He stared at the drink for a few seconds, but then threw it on the counter, saying that we are useless. I got pissed and went ahead to ask him to stop it, but the man pulled out a gun and pointed it toward me. People got scared and ran out of there, but some people tried to calm him down. I just stood there frozen, staring at him, trying to figure out his next move. He then turned the direction of his gun towards Jenny, and as he was about to pull the trigger, I ran towards him. I grabbed his hand, but I was late, and he had already pulled the trigger, and Jenny was shot in the shoulder. After that, I punched the gun away from him and started to punch him. Someone had already called 911, and as soon as they reached, I explained the situation. Jenny was immediately sent to the emergency room, and that man was arrested. My boss scolded me for being reckless and blamed me for the ruckus that was caused. He did not believe me when I told him about the rat situation. He gave me a warning, saying if anything were to go wrong next time, I would get fired. After investigation, it was found out that the man had some mental issues, but he still had a pretty nasty criminal record, so the police did not let him off. Instead, he is still getting investigated and put on trial for multiple cases that were found during this. They were trying to figure out a way to deny his mental illness and put him in for good this time. On the other hand, Jenny has recovered from the gunshot injury and will be continuing her work within a month. And I'm going to transfer to another branch where I guess there will be a completely new set of drama waiting for me.
My name is Kara Dennis. I'm a 19-year-old oil painter living in Sweden. For the past few years, I had been with countless guys, but among any of them, I never felt that he is the one kind of feeling. Okay, here's the deal. I am the one you would call a serial dater. I don't know when it all began and got this way, but the longest I had been with a boy is 2 weeks max. Otherwise, it's either been a few days or a week. If you were to look at my phone, you would find tons of dating apps installed on it. Well, not anymore, because I deleted all of them a few days ago due to a little incident that got me scared of dating through dating apps. It was about 2 weeks ago when I had just broken up with my last boyfriend, Jonas. He was a sweet and nice guy, but too sweet for my taste. He was more like a pushover, and so after dating him for 3 days, I decided to end things with him. That is when I got matched up with this new guy, Mason. I started talking to him, and he seemed nice with just the perfect amount of sweetness in him. His way of engaging in a conversation and answering each of my questions was just attractive on its own. It was the first time in my dating life that I thought about a guy like this. I mean, I had never been too involved in a guy's life. Whenever I get a match on either of the dating apps, I do 3 things. I ask him out on a date, sleep with him, and after sleeping for a few days or so, I lose interest in him. But this time, I was feeling different. This was the first time I wanted to know more about the guy than thinking about other stuff. We exchanged numbers, and I started talking to him over the phone calls, and finally one day, he asked me out on a date through a text. It was his idea to meet in a nightclub, so I agreed to it, all excited that I would be getting to know another side of him. I don't know if you would have believed me, but it was the first time I struggled to choose a dress from my wardrobe. Normally, I always knew what to wear, and since I was aware of my beauty, it did not matter whether the dress was nice or not, it always suited me. But tonight, it took me 2 hours to choose a golden slutty dress to satisfy myself. After that, I applied the most natural looking makeup to make me look more beautiful, and then I head out for the club. We had decided to meet at 9:30 p.m., and it was already 9 p.m. I did not want to be late, so I immediately called a taxi and gave him the club address. The taxi driver adjusted the mirror and started eyeing me while driving, which I noticed, but I did not want to make a scene before reaching the club, so I stayed silent. "Are you going on a date?" He broke the silence and was looking at me through the mirror. I did not say anything and just nodded my head yes. The next thing that he said was, "Don't take it in a bad way, but you look hot, ma'am." That's when I thought I may have gone too far with the dress to impress Mason. Well, he did not do anything to me and dropped me at the address I gave him. I walked into the bar and noticed that all gazes turning in my direction. Now, I know it was because of the dress I was wearing, which, by the way, I was regretting at this point. I started feeling anxious, thinking, what if Mason doesn't like it and judges me in the wrong way because of the dress? But I was also aware of the fact that it was too late to worry about such things now. My phone notification bell rang. I checked, and it was a message from him telling me about the table number he was sitting on. I walked there and saw this tall, muscular man with a tan body. He looked different than how I had pictured him in my head, and it was like he was a completely different person. He scanned me from head to toe as if he was capturing each part of my body in his mind, and it made me feel uncomfortable and self-conscious. We started talking, and he gave only 1 or 2 words responses. For some reason, I was not feeling good talking with him, and you can say this was the worst date I had ever been on. I could not understand why I was so ecstatic and overwhelmed to meet this guy. So the moment I addressed him to ask if I could leave early, he started laughing. I looked at him perplexed, trying to figure out what was going on in his mind, and he said, "You want a date after putting this much effort into your dress and makeup to impress a guy, and you don't even recognize him?" "What do you mean?" I asked with hesitation in my tone. I did not know why, but I was starting to feel anxious by his tone. "I'm not Mason. I just wanted to check who Mason was so crazed about. Turned out it was just some dumbass bitch who doesn't even recognize the poor guy. Now I feel bad for killing the dude." The moment those words hit my ear, I got dumbstruck with terror. I hoped him to be joking, but the way he was saying all that as if he was proud of what he did made me feel even more nervous and scared. I could not figure out why he revealed murdering Mason, and the moment I came up to the conclusion that his intention might be killing me as well, he came closer to me. He put his mouth 2 inches distance from my left ear and said, "Don't worry, I won't kill you. As long as you don't open your mouth, you're safe. So remember, my eyes would always be on you." At this point, I was too petrified to ask him what and why he did that to Mason, and what was his motive behind coming here tonight. He walked me outside the bar with his arm wrapped around my waist and a smile on his face. After calling a taxi for me, he gave me a forced kiss on my lips and then let me go. The moment I reached home, I fell to the floor and started crying. I had no idea what just happened to me and how that strange, weird man got into the picture. All I knew was that I won't date anyone using a dating app, so I deleted all the apps from my phone. It's been a few days since that incident, and I'm still confused about everything. I haven't told anyone about it, and neither did I try to figure out the situation from that day. Either way, it's in my favor, because that man did not show up or contact me ever since that day, and I'm hoping it stays just like this in the future as well.
Our school used to hold these activities at night, in which each class decided on a particular activity to perform and elect 8 class representatives to prepare that activity separately. Representatives for the activities were free to take students who wanted to perform under them so that they could perform the activities together. And most importantly, among the 8 representatives, one was supposed to be in charge of bringing homemade snacks and drinks. Each class elected representatives for this year as well, and representatives chose their groups too. Oh no, if any of you are thinking that I was one of the representatives, then no, I wasn't. I was just a forced volunteer for the food group by my best friend, Mike. So here's the story of that night. I was told to bring drinks for us, so I went to Walmart and bought fruit beers, cold drinks, and a couple other things. I'd already informed and taken permission from my parents about the activities of the night. For some reason, when it comes to school, whatever stupid useless activity the school organizes, my parents automatically agree to it. You don't have to get stubborn over them. You won't have to bargain with them for hours over it. They already agreed, my friend. If your school is organizing a dating event, they would agree without asking. If your school is organizing an overnight party, it's a yes from them. I don't get the school and parents' logic. I mean, I wanted them to deny me from going, but when I asked them over dinner, Mom, Dad, school is organizing an activity tonight, and we'll be staying overnight. Sure, enjoy the night. I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but they said that in sync while staring at their phones. So I didn't even need to ask twice, and I asked them for money to submit in the class for the contributions. If they did not care, then I did not care either. I prepared my sleeping suit and headed out for school for the activity night. The night was going well, activities were great too. When it was all finished, students in our class started playing Truth or Dare. That was when I and 2 other students, Sam and Carla, got the dare to go and take a selfie in the abandoned Walmart building. I told them that we would do that in the daytime, but others forced us, telling us that we couldn't do that right now. Some of them volunteered to wait outside the building in case something goes wrong. The reason they volunteered to come with us was that there was a rumor going around about this building after the Walmart shut down. It was that there was a ghost who lived there, and he doesn't like uninvited visitors. So we headed towards the abandoned Walmart building. When we reached there, apart from the 3 of us, the rest decided to wait outside the building until we came back after taking the selfie. We slowly walked towards the entrance gate of the building. I swear, I could hear Sam's gulping sound and see Carla's trembling hands. We entered the building and walked a bit further inside. There was a light coming from inside, which was pointed at a particular thing that we could not see from this far. I got curious and asked others to come with me, and we would take a selfie there. Carla started to argue that she was already scared enough and that she would just get it over with, while Sam was quietly staring at the light, which all of a sudden turned off. We got scared and quickly took a selfie. When we were done taking the selfie, we started to head in the direction that we came from, but as we were walking there, it felt like we were walking in circles. I turned to look around, but we were at the same spot where we took the selfie. All 3 of us freaked out and started to run, but when we stopped, we were standing in the same position again. We started to scream from the fear and from the ominous feeling that surrounded us in the area. We kept running and ended up in the same spot each time. That was when we heard the voices of other students. They were coming from outside the building from a distance, so we decided to follow their voices. We were going closer and closer to the voices when all of a sudden, Sam froze at the spot where he was standing. We tried to shake him up, but then suddenly he looked at Carla with a dead look in his eyes and reached out his hands to her neck and started strangling her. I kept screaming and trying to pull him away from her, but for some reason, the weak-nerved Sam was stronger all of a sudden. No matter how much I tried to pull him away, he kept strangling her until she passed out after struggling. He turned his head towards me, which I sensed, and started to run away from him. He kept chasing me. I did not understand what was going on with Sam and why he was acting this way. I tried hiding from him, but he caught me and started strangling me too. While he was doing that, I tried grabbing whatever was around, and strangely enough, I found a rock and hit him with it. After that, I was too scared to stay conscious and passed out by it. When I woke up, there were cops, students, and our parents surrounding us as the students outside heard our screaming voices and tried to get inside, but couldn't for some reason. So they called 911 on us, and they got there. And when they got there, they saw us all passed out on the floor. We were taken to the hospital to get treatment, but still, we couldn't overcome the trauma of that night. I don't know what Sam went through because he was the one who got possessed, but I told him that I was there for him if he needed me. Sam and I became good friends after that, but we decided to never talk about the incident, and Carla transferred to another school. And one more thing, the students who gave us the dare were suspended for an entire week, and after the objection from many parents, the activity nights got canceled forever in our school. Patricia, that's such an old name. Poor you. Who named you this? It was a lady I just met a few minutes ago in Walmart's grocery department when I was shopping. I had picked up the last 2 remaining cabbages that were on sale, and when she asked me to give her one, even though I didn't want to hand her over the cabbage, I still let her have it. I was about to leave when she asked me about my name. And the rest of her criticized it. Without replying or saying a word, I just left there to continue my shopping. It wasn't my first time shopping alone at Walmart, but still, it was after a long period of time since I had come shopping. Mostly, I would ask my husband to bring the items we need, or whenever my mother-in-law went shopping, she would buy the stuff we needed at home. So I never had a chance to come out and buy anything myself. It had been 6 months or so since I got married, and yes, my in-laws live in the same house as us, which is pretty nice, because being an orphan, living in a family with many members had always been my dream. And after getting married to Josh, it finally came true. They all adore and spoil me because they never had a daughter in their family, which they always wished for. Josh was at work today and my mother-in-law was visiting one of her friends, so I thought I should go out there for once and buy the groceries myself. I took out my phone to check the list, and that's when I saw the same woman coming in my direction. I don't know why, but I wasn't getting a good vibe from her, so I turned in a different direction to avoid her. After that, I did not see her and continued to focus my shopping for the rest of my time there. As I was picking up the last item on the list, I heard a commotion coming from the electronics department, so I thought I'd go in there and checking out what was going on. When I reached there, I saw a crowd circling 2 people. From what I could tell, that one of them was the woman from earlier. He was pulling out a white girl's hair and shouting at her. While the employees were trying to pull them apart from each other, the 2 of them were continuously cussing each other and calling out names. I could not understand what in the world was going on here, except that the 2 women were going on at each other, fighting nasty. "Hey, what's going on here?" I asked a girl in the crowd who was also watching them like me. "I don't know, I also got here a few minutes ago," he replied to me. The fat woman you see over there pulling at the girl's hair, she was pickpocketing, and when the girl saw that, she started blaming her and arguing with her. Another lady from the crowd said, "Let's call her A." No, I heard it was the girl who was pickpocketing the lady, and she was just trying to stop her when she started attacking her. Another lady in the crowds heard our conversation and added, "Let's call her B." You heard? I was there when it happened. The girl called out the woman for pickpocketing and they started arguing over her. Lady A said, which made Lady B silent. Everyone present there was also filming the fight or discussing which one of them was there to blame. After 15 minutes of watching the fight, I thought it would be useless and decided to proceed with my shopping. I went to the counter and stood there in line. Not to my surprise, there were fewer people there because of the fight. So my turn came up quickly and the cashier started to bill up my products. That was when I saw 2 security people dragging the woman with them while the girl was talking with them. Ladies A and B also came and stood in line while talking to each other. They were saying that they could not believe a woman of such an age was pickpocketing and so many things like that. What I could make of the conversation was that the security checked and found her hiding many things. The security had been taking them for a thorough check so that they can find out how many things she had picked. After my billing was done, I paid the money and headed outside the Walmart. As I was taking out the car from the driveway, I could hear everyone present there talking about the lady and the girl who got into a fight. Even though pickpocketing was common, such a commotion in public places such as Walmart were rare at those times. As I was driving back home, I got stuck in traffic for longer than usual because of an accident. A truck driver who was drunk in the middle of the day hit a cab. The cab driver died on spot and the passengers in the cab were badly injured. I could not believe my luck. The first time coming out in a while, and these incidences kept happening in a row. When I reached home, my mother-in-law was already there. She asked me if she was okay because she'd already heard from someone about the fight in the Walmart and the accident that had happened as well. I told her that I was fine, and even though it wasn't such a big deal, it still got me a bit spooked because everything that happened today. Josh came a bit later than usual that night, and when I asked, he told me that one of his colleagues got married recently. His wife got into a fight at Walmart with some lady, so he had to take care of his share of work as well. He told me that his colleague's wife told him that she was shopping on her own, and that lady approached her when she was picking up some items from the sale. After that, she started following her, and that was when she noticed her pickpocketing and slipping some items in the girl's bag. So she called her out for that. I felt a bit relieved that I got away from the lady when I did that, because you never know, it could have been me instead of that girl. And there were chances that she may have blamed me.
In September of 2022, a 20-year-old Australian university student posted a harrowing personal account to the popular social media site. In it, she detailed the terrifying ordeal she'd been subject to after posting intimate pictures of herself on a social media page known as OnlyFans. One involved obsessive stalking, internet loopholes, and ultimately, a clear and present threat to her life. Only through a completely anonymous throwaway account that she feels safe enough to share a story, adding that her local police force had finally taken action against the person responsible. But even then, the girl made it clear that her complaint should have been taken seriously long before she was in any imminent danger. According to the girl, the incidents all started after she moved back with her parents during the summer break. The girl was particularly excited to be home as the family had just bought a new puppy. By all accounts, the girl was having a ball getting to know her new furry friend. But as anyone who's ever had a puppy will tell you, to say they can be erratic would be the understatement of the century. On night, the girl awoke to hear her puppy yelping at the back door. They were in the middle of the potty and went downstairs to let the dog out. She says it was as late as 2 a.m., and there didn't seem to be another soul around as she stepped down into the night, but as soon found out she wasn't entirely alone. I saw this figure in a car, she said. I could tell they were looking at me, but it was pitch black outside, and I couldn't make out their face. I felt a bit uneasy, but I didn't really think anything of it. Only when I go back inside, the car started up and followed me up my driveway. The terror of such an experience is undeniable, and even though the girl was so close to home, there's no denying that being out alone in the middle of the night made her very vulnerable indeed. I was terrified, the girl added. I sprinted back inside and locked the door and kept my eye out for them in case they tried to break in. But as far as I know, they just backed out the driveway and left. Then she woke up the following morning after a terrible night of restless sleep and deep concern. The girl found an envelope and said her parents left her box. The envelope contained not only 20 Australian dollars in cash, but also her OnlyFans username. I thought long and hard about how he could have found my parents' address, the girl said. Now working out the problem didn't start until I shared my Amazon wish list. OnlyFans and Amazon were both adamant that the security systems prevent leaks from taking place. However, it appeared that wasn't the issue. A third-party seller was not bound to the same data protection laws as large multinational companies. Although she doesn't know for certain how her stalker got her address, the girl is 90% sure that they got in touch with a third-party seller and obtained her home address in that way. Whether it was money, coercion, or intimidation that caused the seller to give up the info is another question entirely. But the fact remains that's the most likely of all explanations. After that, when I moved back to the college town where I was studying, I stopped posting content. The girl goes on to explain, but somehow my stalker still managed to track me down. The girl said she basically closed down her fans account and started a YouTube account because of how unsafe the former felt. Her first big blogging project was due to be a shopping trip to a local mall, but when she got to her car to depart for the day, she found that she had been ransacked. The vlogging camera was missing too. She said, "I know that's my fault for leaving it in the car, but I was using it the night before, and since I live in a gated area, I didn't think I would be unsafe." That she added that the camera was inside of her glove box and contained an SD card with unreleased photos and videos on it. It was almost like someone knew it was there. But as bad as it was, it only got weirder from there. She eventually contacted her building security personnel asking if they could review security camera footage from the previous few nights. And it was through this that not only did she see a man break into her car and ignore other cars in the parking lot, but she also had proof she was being deliberately singled out for targeted harassment. After they got the camera, they walked around the duplex until stopping nearby my window. The girl wrote, "My bedroom faces an outside street and the blinds are broken, so it's very easy to see in. I have a curtain, but it doesn't cover my wall into all the way. Look, what I'm trying to say is this person watched me sleep for an hour, so I have no idea why they didn't try to break in, but thank God they didn't." The woman explained her camera was later recovered at a nearby secondhand store, suggesting whoever is stalking her has a prior history of criminality. However, she added that the camera's memory card was missing. "I know he kept it as some kind of trophy, I just know it." She added, and has since moved in hopes his stalker hasn't followed. "I believe the police are still trying to track them down, but I have broken my lease and moved to a new place, so hopefully this will keep me safe." But what's so scary about the girl's story is that it seems like only a matter of time before the stalker decides to take things further, unless they're caught. Stalkers will only ever escalate their activities until their obsession reaches a deadly and permanent end. It was the day when my boss asked me the most bizarre article to publish about the LGBTQ+ community, since they had always been so private and secretive about themselves. By the way, in my opinion, it was not true. I had seen them being open and oversharing about themselves, but my boss wanted to go undercover and get along with them to get the inner scoop for the article. He did not give me a clear point about what it was that I was supposed to look for. Instead, he just said, "You'll know when you find it." It was frustrating for me to work with him any longer, but since I needed the experience to get a bigger opportunity, I had no other choice. As he instructed, I downloaded Tinder and created a profile for myself. I put my sexual preference on bi and started to wait for the moment when someone gets matched with me. In the meantime, I asked my other gay and lesbian friends some questions about their lives, but whatever answer they gave me did not seem to satisfy me. It was Thursday afternoon when I got matched with a girl named Julie, who had put on her profile that she was a lesbian. As I chatted with her, she told me that she was not satisfied with her sexuality and was thinking of transitioning. I got a strong urge to talk some sense into her and explain to her that she could love her the way she is, but I couldn't because there was a huge possibility it could blow up my cover. So I played along and tried to act as naturally as I could. She also told me that she had recently accepted herself and broke up with her boyfriend because she no longer felt attracted to him. That is when she felt she was a lesbian. It felt similar to my other gay and trans friends, so I figured not being comfortable in their skin the way we do must be something these people might have in common among themselves. Anyway, she told me she did not want to rush into a relationship so soon, and thinking of taking things slow, which was good for me because that way I could not be feeling too guilty about using her for my article. So we started as friends and continued to engage in chatting daily. I soon found out she was 19 years old and figured she might have made a rash decision by rushing into these sexual identity things, but except for feeling guilty, there was nothing else I could do. There was no way I was going to risk my job over this. You can call me selfish for this, but it was the right thing to do for myself. One evening, my boss called me to inform me that I was taking too much time, and as a result of his impatience, he was transferring the project to someone else. For some reason, I felt a heavy burden getting lifted off my chest because I was tired of deceiving Julie, and I did not want to do that anymore. Now all I needed was to come clean to her, but I did not have enough guts for it, so I simply avoided opening Tinder. 2 weeks later, I got a text from her asking me out on a date, which I agreed to because it was the perfect opportunity for me to tell her everything. We agreed to meet in a cafe in the evening, and she told me she would be wearing a green dress. When I saw the girl introducing herself to me as Julie, I couldn't help but think she looked older than the age she told me. But the way she was talking and holding up the conversation, I was sure it was the same girl I had been chatting with the past few days. She seemed nice and bubbly, so I figured I might be wrong about her age. Hey, want to come with me to see something nice? As we were about to say goodbye to each other, she suggested. I wanted to deny it, but I was already feeling enough guilt about not being able to tell her the truth, so I agreed. She walked me to her car and started talking about her childhood as we got in. As she was driving me to the area which seemed secluded, she started telling me how she murdered her gardener when she was 17. I started panicking and asked her to stop the car, but she turned her head to me and said, "Did you think I believed your story of being from the LGBTQ+ community? Hell, even I am not one of them. I was just looking for prey." Her face seemed so monstrous with that evil smile that it freaked me out completely. "Why are you doing this to me?" I said with my voice trembling as I kept panicking. "Oh no, honey, don't be mistaken. None of this is your fault except matching with me on Tinder. It's just that I love seeing others in pain." As she said that, she took out a gun and pointed it at my head. Guess she figured I was planning to jump off the car, so she did not hesitate once to fire the bullet in injuring my left hand. I let out a loud, painful scream, and in response, she moaned and started laughing, which was even more terrifying. I had to do something if I wanted to get myself out of this messy situation, but I could not figure out what to do. That was when my head stopped working, and I simply started wrestling her to take the gun away from her. As I was already in pain and bleeding, I wasn't going to hold out any longer, so I somehow managed to make her lose the balance of the car. As a result, we got into an accident, but she was a tough one. Even after getting injured, she was still holding up, while I was barely keeping myself conscious in the situation. As my vision faded, I heard someone rushing toward the car, and the fading voice of the girl trying to murder me. "No, sir, everything is fine. I will call an ambulance myself. You don't..." These sentences are followed by a gunshot, and everything went blank after that. When I woke up, I was in an emergency room, and a man was sitting across from me. I turned my head, only to find out that the girl was lying unconscious on the bed next to me. The man told me he was driving past us when he saw the accident, but when he went to help us, the other girl tried to kill him. As she pointed the gun at him, he acted quickly, and the bullet accidentally got fired into her stomach. Even after that, he called the ambulance on us and got us admitted to the emergency room. The police came and got my statement. I ended up telling them everything that had happened the past few days. And as I got discharged, the first thing I did was quit my job, which was the cause of my suffering. One thing I was sure of, though, was that bullet in Julie's stomach was not an accident. That guy intended to do that. After a thorough investigation, it was revealed that Julie had conditions of IED, APD, etc., which were developed at a very young age when she was being forced to live the life of a guy by her parents. She killed them and ended up in a mental hospital. But it was 6 months ago when she ran away from there and started killing people. I felt relieved that I got out of the situation when I did. Otherwise, God knows what might have happened to me.
When I was 18, I worked at my college's residence building at the front desk, and I think I almost got assaulted or murdered. You be the judge. During the summer, the building operated as a hotel, so 2.5 floors were hotel rooms and half the third floor were student rooms. The whole building operated with a hotel swipe key system that was pretty outdated, and all the doors were powered by 4 AA batteries. If the batteries died, there was a decently lengthy process to replace them and reprogram the door. Our dark-haired guy came to the front desk from inside the building while I was working an overnight shift at around 1 or 2 a.m., and he said he left his keycard in his room. I made him a new one and made my first error of the night. Hotel guests could have as many room keys remade as they wanted, hypothetically. Students, however, were supposed to be given a temporary keycard and charged $2 to be returned when theirs is located. I gave him a new key for his room and asked if he was a student or a hotel guest, and he replied, "Student." At this point, I should have checked our system to charge his account, but I was caught up doing administrative duties and forgore. I used to trust people way too easily at this job, but quickly learned not to. Later on in the night, maybe at around 3 or 4 a.m., he came to the desk again and said he couldn't get into his room. I asked if he just forgot his key again, and he said no, the door wasn't working. I asked if the light was coming on when he swiped his card, and he said no, so I figured the batteries were dead. I told him I'd have to change the batteries, and I went up to his room with him. He asked me for my name, and I told him. He didn't tell me his. I opened the room door manually with a master key and told him I'd have to prop it open while I worked on the back panel to replace the batteries. He said, "No, it's okay, I'll close it," and closed and deadbolted the door locked. Really freaking weird, but I tried not to think about it. I had changed the batteries on plenty of other doors by this point, and some students were iffy about having their doors propped open for their room to be on display for anyone walking by. He also had a really thick accent, and I thought he might be an international student since we had a lot of students from other countries where English was not their first language. I gave him the benefit of the doubt and thought maybe it was also just a language barrier issue. At this point, though, I really felt like something was wrong, but I tried to ignore it so I didn't freak him out. While I was trying to focus on fixing the door as quickly as possible, he kept trying to entice me to go further into the room, saying his bed was broken and he needed me to take a look at it. There was something underneath it that needed to be fixed, etc. He held out a little gold house key and said, "I have a key, go get it," and threw it under the bed. He said that there was a leak under the fridge. He just kept trying to get me down on the ground, throwing random problems at me. Obviously, I told him no. I'd send maintenance up in the morning to take a look at it if anything was broken. I had my back to him and he asked me if I could take off my glasses. I said no, I needed them to see. His tone of voice changed, and in the most steady, chilling manner, he said, "Ella, it's okay. You can take them off." And from behind me, he reached around and tried to take off my glasses. I swatted his hand away and, trying to remain composed, said, "No thanks, I need to keep them on." Even though he was creeping me out, I didn't want to be rude to him. I didn't want to get in trouble if he complained about me or risk upsetting him and having him yell at me. I got up to grab something from the door repair kit and undid the door deadbolt and opened it up in the process. He jumped toward the door to close it again and told me to keep it closed. I told him no. I had to open it to start reprogramming it from the front. While I held the door open with my foot and grabbed something from the door repair kit, he started playing with the little wispy hairs at the top of my forehead and trying to touch my shoulder. I swatted him away again and asked him not to touch me and focused on getting out of there. He once again tried getting me to follow him into the bedroom, saying the bed was broken, and I went as far as the door frame to see if I could spot any actual problem with his bed. This is when I realized that he had nothing in his room. No dishes in the kitchen, no shower curtain in the bathroom, no sheets on the bed. Nothing. This wasn't his room. My brain once again went back to the international student theory, thinking that he had just arrived today and hadn't gotten a chance to buy anything yet, but in the pit of my stomach, I knew something was wrong. I fiddled around with the door for a few more seconds before announcing that it was fixed and quickly gathered the door kit and left. Before I had reached the elevator, he came back out without his shoes on to follow me. He tried to get back in to get his shoes and called out, "Ella, the door isn't fixed. You need to come back." I went back and opened the door manually and told him if the door was broken, I'd have to send up maintenance to fix it in the morning. I knew he was going to follow me to the elevator again, so I closed the door behind me once he went inside and ran down the stairwell as fast as I could. When I got to the front desk, I checked the computer and saw that the room he was in was supposed to be empty. It wasn't a student room or a hotel room. I locked myself in our back office and called campus security. He came down a few minutes later and went behind the desk. I yelled at him to get on the other side and wait, now that I knew that he wasn't a resident. He tore the corner off a slip of paper I had sitting on the desk and drew a flower on it, then put it back on top of my papers. When security arrived, he ran back up to the empty room and tried convincing them he lived there so he wouldn't have to leave. He kept showing them his key, which had decided to work on the door again somehow. They escorted him back downstairs and came to ask me if he really did live there. I mean, obviously he didn't. That's why I called you guys crying and terrified. He kept interjecting to argue that he did live there. He couldn't even recall his room number when asked. Security asked him for a student card and he couldn't produce it, so they told him he would have to leave if he couldn't prove that he lived there. While they were grabbing his information, I listened from the office and could immediately tell that he was lying. The phone number he gave was just a bunch of random numbers. The name he gave was prefixed by as if he was trying to think of a name. When they asked him for his address, he just said across the street. One security guard asked if he lived in the apartments across the street and he said yes, but couldn't tell them what the building number was. He said his apartment number was 1200, but I moved into that building a few months later and apartment 1200 doesn't exist. When security asked what his purpose was to be sneaking into a room, he just kept up the ums and uhs, saying he didn't know. They asked, "Were you trying to see a friend? Did you know anybody who lives here? Were you here to hurt somebody?" And he kept fidgeting and saying, "I don't know, no reason, I'm just here." At one point he tried to tell them that he was my friend, at which point I poked my head out of the office to say that I literally had never seen him before that night. He left. We didn't call the police because he didn't actually do anything, but it was still very insane. Later on, it dawned on me how he figured out that room was vacant. One of the housekeepers had been using it as her personal break room. A few days later, a housekeeper came to the desk and told me that they found the door dead-bolted open, the TV on, and a housekeeper inside watching TV. She must have forgotten to close the door when she left for the night, and when the creep let himself into the building, he found it. I never saw him again, and to this day I have no clue what he was doing there. I haven't worked there since last winter, and overnight shifts still give me the heebie-jeebies. I got a few work-related stories from my hometown I can post. This first one happened when I was a 20-year-old college student. At the time, I worked in a, let's say, rustic-looking gas station. It wasn't a building by itself either. Rather, it acted more like a booth that was attached to a supermarket. The booth itself is located a bit off-site on the other side of this huge parking lot, but the supermarket owns it. The booth faces the store, but it has a huge woodland area directly behind it. The door to the booth faces left into the woods, and I know I'm being overly specific, but this is important. So the window in the booth is bulletproof, but only covers the front so you can't see directly to the left or right of the booth. At the time of this experience, I'd been working at the station for maybe a few months, when all of a sudden, this nasty storm hit the area one night. The rain was so bad that you could barely see 10 feet in front of you, and it was flooding all over the place. But the supermarket, being desperate for money, refused to close the booth down, so I showed up for my typical 5 to 11 p.m. shift in the pouring rain. 3 hours into my shift, the power goes out due to the storm, which by this point has gotten downright apocalyptic. It's pitch black out there, and the rain is coming down hard, so I decided to sit tight in the booth while I wait for a manager or something to either let me go or to fix the power. Of course, this means the phones are down, so I can't call in the store, and nobody in their right mind is buying gas, so I decided to start doing my booth chores like cleaning the counter, counting cigarettes, tidying the drawer, etc. Now, this next part will require a bit more background information, so bear with me. The booth itself is supposed to be locked at all times, but one of the new hires managed to break the key off inside the lock, making one of our managers break the lock so we all could get back inside. That lock still hadn't been replaced, but we were told to pretend the door was still locked. The door still had a deadbolt, but I found it annoying to fool with, so I mostly just left it unlocked. Whenever I'd go to open the door, I'd pretend to put the key in and make an audible ksh sound like a lock being opened. Anyway, back to me sitting in the unlocked booth in the pitch-black pouring rain. I'm in the middle of my chores when I hear something outside the booth, like a muffled sort of splashing sound. Again, there is zero visibility, so I press my ear against the door and I can clearly hear someone walking around the booth, in the rain, before stopping in front of the door. Before I can kick myself for not locking it, I hear that ksh sound, followed by the most dreadfully quiet couple of seconds. I'm just waiting to die at the hands of some deranged serial killer or crackhead, when suddenly, the footsteps start splashing back into the woods. I quietly soil myself as I race to lock the deadbolt and I wait out my shift. I would occasionally hear the footsteps outside, but they never tried to open the door. Finally, my manager drives over in a truck to close me out for the night. Since I'm still kind of new here, I didn't want to seem like I was delusional or crazy or that I was a crackhead, so I never mentioned it to him or anyone else at the store. A few months later, this kid I was training told me he'd heard footsteps real late one night during a storm, and thankfully, the lock had been replaced since then. I just tell him it was nothing, but not to open the door if he thinks there is something out there. Not because I didn't want to look delusional, but because I can't explain this phenomenon. Now fast forward a couple of months, and I'm still working at the booth. By this point, I'm the second oldest person working there, so sometimes I'd get calls from younger coworkers when they accidentally mess up. On this particular night I was off, but I still got a call from this high schooler who I'll call Rhea. I look at the time and it's 9:30, so I sigh and pick up the phone, and before I can even get in a what happened, Rhea is in hysterics, saying something about her trainee being missing, and then lots of sobbing. Confused, if not a little agitated that she called me first, I try to get her to call the cops or something if he's been kidnapped, but she insists that she can't call the cops because they wouldn't believe her. So, my next line of thinking is to ask her why she hasn't told a manager, and she cries some more and says that they wouldn't understand. More agitated than confused, I agreed to go out there and calm her down. I get dressed, go out there, and park next to the booth. There were no customers around, and the girl was just standing in the booth, staring at the door. She spots me, opens the door, and starts sobbing, telling me to hurry inside. Eventually, I got her to stop crying long enough to tell me what happened. Apparently, she was training this new guy, Matt, who was an older guy about my age, and she said, the dude felt off, like a robot or something, and kept staring at her all dazed. Several times he would stop talking mid-sentence and ignored her attempts to address it. At this point, she's getting real uncomfortable and is about to call into the store about him when he starts sort of humming, she says. She described it as kind of like as if someone was attempting to imitate a purring cat, like they were breathing heavily and buzzing at the same time. So she reaches for the phone, and he reacts by grabbing her hand and just staring at her. She starts bawling at this point, begging him to stop, and he lets go of her hand, then opens the door and just sprints off into the woods out of sight. She said he came back a few minutes just before I got there and asked to be let back in, but she refused, so he just ran back into the woods. At this point, I'm either thinking he picked up on the meth phase that the neighborhood was slinging around or that she's being dramatic. Regardless, the story sounded pretty dangerous and we needed to call the cops or something at least. I tell her we're going to call the cops and then we're going to walk outside and wait for them, but she doesn't want to go outside. She says that she can almost feel him waiting out there. Tired, irritated, and not really buying the story, I just say screw it. She can stay in the booth and call the cops while I make sure the tree line is clear. I take this weak little flashlight that I stashed out there after the first story and go outside to start scanning the tree line. I barely begin shining the light around when suddenly the hair stands up on the back of my neck as I hear this humming noise. She described it rather well too, because it sounded kind of like cicadas mixed with breathing. I look inside the booth and she's curled up in the chair, staring to my left. I didn't even look where she was staring, I just immediately booked it back to get inside. But I left the keys with her, and she's not getting up to let me in. I'm pounding on the door while screaming at her to let me in, and the humming stops abruptly as I hear something behind me and to the left. It's Matt. He's standing just on the edge of the trees. My panic intensifies, and at this point, Rhea finally lets me into the booth, and I immediately deadbolt the thing shut. All of a sudden, Matt is right outside asking to be let back in. He says he's sorry, and that he got a bit nervous back there, and he begins circling the booth while he just repeats the same couple of excuses, asking to come in. This continues for maybe 5 minutes before the cops arrive, and Matt just begins to run off into the woods again. I end up having to explain to both the cops and our manager what happened, leaving out the weird humming. As far as I know, Matt never showed up, so they fired him and Rhea quit eventually, and that was the end of it. I was never particularly close to Rhea since she was still in high school when I was in college, so we never got to talk about what happened. I have no idea what happened that night though. Maybe Matt was just some doped up meth junkie who was capable of making some really weird noises. I'll never know. I guess it could explain why he bolted out of there when the cops began to show up, but that day is still quite a mystery to my mind.
The incident I'm about to tell you still haunts me to this day. It happened to me when I was still in high school. A new game was in the craze at the time, Dragon Age Inquisition. It was a 4-player life simulation game. In that game, the player had to take on the role of one of the 4 Inquisition. They were dispatched to eliminate either a cohort of Venatori, a battalion of Red Templars, a swarm of Darkspawn, a pack of demons, or a Katam and Kanari that had taken control of an area. Every location had 5 zones, and once the players completed the first 4 zones, the agents had to face enemies led by the enemy commander, either Calpurnia, Samson, or Emissary Alpha, an Envy Demon, or Sereth, depending on which faction they are fighting. Once the final wave of enemies was killed, the match ends victoriously. I was obsessed with that game, and often used to go to the nearby gaming cafe to play it. I used to play this game for hours, and after I was finished playing, I used to open my Facebook account and post my progress of it. I often played with different players, but there was one guy with name of Hunter Z309 whom I played most of my games with. We even used to talk using Dialogue Wheel. One day after the game, I logged into Facebook and uploaded my progress post. After that, I clicked the messages of others and went to check notifications. Someone had tagged me in a post, and the person who tagged me was unknown to me. So I checked the post, and there was a picture of me sitting in the cafe playing Dragon Age. The picture was taken 2 days ago. I recognized the outfit from that day. I looked around. Everyone was busy on their own. Surprisingly, he was in my friends list, and I had no idea when I added him. I did not think much of it at the time, but slowly it started to increase. I was tagged in more pictures of me. I had no idea who it was and when did he take my picture. I messaged him, saying it's rude to take pictures of others and upload it without permission. He instantly replied, "I'm sorry, I'll take it down." And after that, all the posts with my pictures were deleted from his account. I was relieved, but I was still not sure about him taking my pictures again. I messaged him saying not to do this anymore, but I should have been a little more specific about it. The next day, when after playing game, I checked my Facebook. The pictures were sent into my inbox and they were from the same day. I looked around and shouted, "Who is it?" Everyone started looking at me with confusion, so I couldn't recognize who it was. I texted him to stop it, but there was no reply. The pictures kept increasing day by day, so I complained about it to the cafe owner. But even after that, it did not stop. And along with the pictures of me being in the cafe, other pictures that were downloaded from my Facebook and were edited in nude models' bodies started to come. I was extremely worried about it and had no idea what to do. I thought of telling my parents about it, but since I used to come here by the excuse of going to the library, I was really scared, so I stopped going to the cafe. But it still did not stop. He started sending threat messages to me, along with the pictures of new models with my face edited on it. One day, he sent me a picture of a nude model in a weird pose and asked me to send him my picture in that pose. I immediately blocked him and deactivated my Facebook account. I locked myself inside my room and stopped going anywhere. My parents started to worry about me and started to ask questions. I had no courage to tell them about it after lying to them so much. I was depressed. After a few days, one of my friends sent me a picture that was going viral and told me that it was my picture. I checked, and it was the same picture with that nude model in that pose, but with my face edited to it. I immediately told her about everything. She said I should tell my parents about it before they find such pictures from somewhere else and report this. I stomped back and forth in my room, arguing subconsciously to myself if I should tell them or not. What if they start to yell? What if they don't even talk to me anymore? What if they kick me out of the house? And what if they don't want me anymore? All what-if questions were roaming around in my mind. Somehow, I managed to gather enough courage to tell them about it and come clean. When we were all having dinner, I approached them, saying, "I need to tell you guys something." Their focus went toward me, and I started to tell them everything. I told them about how I used to go play games and not library and how I ended up with a cyber stalker. I thought that they would be disappointed in me, but that wasn't the case. They looked at me with a concerned look, and my mother spoke. "We know, honey, about you going to the cafe. We let you be because we know you study hard." My parents told me not to worry and they will take care of it. They went there and reported it to the cyber police department. The investigation started and they tracked the source of the post and messages. It turned out to be the cafe owner's son, and he was also the one who used to play with me online. All the posts that were uploaded by him, along with the viral ones, were completely taken down from the internet. I was relieved. But the next day when I went to school, I felt like everyone was staring at me and gossiping about me. Everyone was talking about what happened to me. My friends started to avoid me. But still, somehow I managed to finish my school and started preparing for college. Even to this day, sometimes people recognize me from the viral picture and ask me about it. It has become a habit of mine to ignore such people.
In my early 20s, I went through a wandering stage. I had just graduated from college and couldn't find a job anywhere. Rather than go a couple $100 into the hole every month paying for rent while searching for a job, I decided to pack up with my few belongings I owned and headed out to see the country. And this is something I cannot recommend enough. Stay off the interstates, pop a train from time to time, and hitchhike with no particular destination in mind. It was this kind of aimless wandering that led me to the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. If you've never experienced them, the Barrens are an amazing place. Huge stands of oak and evergreen trees, many older than time itself, grow out of that strange, sickly soil. Sugar sand, the locals call it in the rainy season, that forms quicksand. And then the dry season, it can still swallow farm machinery whole. Of the few farms that I saw, they all looked like they had seen better times, and many looked like they had sat untouched for decades. There was something alluring about that place, a sort of ancient secret I was afforded glimpses of in the shadows when the wind stirred the trees. The sort of movement at the edge of your vision that follows you throughout the day, but disappears as soon as you turn your head. From time to time, I hiked down old dusty roads, an old pickup truck, or a rusted out car would bound over a hill toward me. Most times, the driver would eye me suspiciously and speed up as they approached. Occasionally, the driver would stop to talk to me for a few minutes. "What are you doing out here?" one old toothless man clad in overalls asked me wandering around. "Seeing what there is to see," I replied. The old man spat out a putrid brown stream into the dust. "Ain't nothing to see around here." When I asked the old man what he meant by that, he made a guttural, throaty sound. I wasn't sure if he was choking on his tobacco or bothered by the question, but he didn't answer. He offered me a ride in his pickup the way that I had come back into town. But when I declined, he spat out into the dirt again and sped off, shaking his head. My eventual plan was to make it to Delaware sometime that summer and meet up with some extended family there, but I was in no hurry. In truth, I had been in heaven these last few weeks, taking my time heading south and exploring anything that caught my eye. I had explored every abandoned building and every cave I had seen. I had half my weight in power bars in my backpack. But over the last 2 months, I had honed my skills at trapping rabbits and gathering wild edibles. Sitting up late at night beside my campfire and sleeping beneath the stars. The night sky in an area so devoid of human influence is beyond comprehension. But tonight, there were clouds moving in, and the sun was disappearing faster than I had grown accustomed to. When the deep roar of thunder shook the valley, I knew that I had better find shelter. In the failing sunlight, I could see in the distance some structures at the top of the hill. I ran the half-mile distance and was disappointed to see that the ancient house and barn were in terrible shape. The roof of the barn had been completely collapsed, and the upper 2 floors of this 3-story house had collapsed into a mangle of ancient wood. Still, the house was my best option, so I made my way toward it as the heavens began to open up. As I'd seen on other properties in the area, this house had a small cemetery in the yard. I ran toward the gaping front door of the dilapidated house, carefully making my way between the headstones. When lightning flashed, I was able to make out the name on several of the headstones, which the elements hadn't completely erased. When they got inside, the floor was spongy, but felt solid enough to hold my weight. I took off my pack and set it near the door, caught my breath, and had a look around. The hinges of the front door had long since rusted away, but I was able to fit the door back into the opening enough to hopefully keep the wind and rain out. At one end of the room, there was a stone fireplace and chimney which was solidly constructed, but I had no wood for a fire. Next to the fireplace was a stairwell full of rubble and cobwebs. I didn't dare apply my weight to those steps, as many had rotted to nothing under their own pitiful weight. Opposite the front door was an opening to an old kitchen of sorts, but when I tried to approach it, my foot went clean through the floor, and I decided to stay put until the storm blew over. The remains of the upper floor did an adequate job of keeping the ground floor dry, and I was able to arrange my sleeping bag so that very little water draining from the upper floors managed to land on it. I got out my harmonica and played for a few minutes, then stopped, apprehensive. I didn't know what I was afraid of, but something had chilled me to my core. Outside, the storm had continued to build in intensity. My eyes were focused on that stairwell, seeing nothing in darkness, and flash blinded when lightning struck. I must have fallen asleep at some point because suddenly I came to with a searing pain in my neck from leaning my head against the wall for so long. Outside, the storm continued to pound down its fury upon Earth. As I sat there, rubbing my neck, and began to chuckle to myself for getting wrapped up in the superstition of the area when I heard it. At first, I heard indiscriminate movement of stairs and the ruins of the upper 2 floors. I was just about to write it off as rats when suddenly it stopped. I froze in place, daring only to move my eyes, and even then, just barely. After 30 seconds of paralytic fear, I smiled at myself again and was just about to settle into my sleeping bag when I looked toward the stairs. At the top of the doorway were a pair of glowing red orbs staring directly at me. Very slowly, they closed down to horizontal slits, then opened up again wider than before. I can't tell you how long I sat there staring at it, staring at me. It could have been a second. It could have been hours. And eventually, my lower-level self-preservation skills began to kick in, and subconsciously, I started reaching for the knife on my belt. Our eyes locked. My hand progressed inch by inch towards my only means of defending myself. Neither of us blinked for what felt like hours, and while the storm raged on, I prayed for another lightning strike so that I might even catch a glimpse of my adversary. But despite the ferocity of the rain, the darkness was absolute. When, at last, my hand reassuringly touched the hilt of my knife, it seemed as if the very fabric of existence was ripped to shreds. The creature began bellowing in the most unearthly, mind-numbing shriek I'd ever heard. Knowing I only had one chance, in one fluid motion, I released the snap that held my knife in place, and released an inside overhand throw that I had practiced during my years of my misspent adolescence. I heard a sickening, wet thunk, and the shrieking increased in volume 100-fold. As I smashed that rotten door to pieces, I heard the creature flapping against the wall and screaming. Just as I wrenched the remains of the door open, a great flash of lightning struck. And all around the house, I saw piles of bones, feathers, and fur. I ran as I had never run before, since I ran into my veins pumped acid and my limbs were stone. I couldn't see where I was going, but I could follow the dirt roads by the sounds of the sugar sand slipping roadside debris into the ditches. I didn't dare look over my shoulder. When the sun finally rose, I collapsed in the middle of the road. Heaving, oblivious to the downpour, I awoke with a startle to the sound of a car horn blaring inches from my head. I leaped to my feet and spun around to see the same old man from yesterday holding his sides with laughter. When I opened my mouth to speak, he motioned with his thumb to the back of his truck. I climbed in without a word, and he began to drive. The events of the previous night had began to replay themselves in my head. What had just happened? No matter how many times I considered what I saw, none of it made any sense. As we drove, I realized how far I had run in the dark. It must have been nearly 10 miles. I was angry with myself for being so terrified by a dream. And that's the only thing that could have been approached from this angle. Everything fit into place, and experience to false awakening. There's so many times in the past when experimenting with dream herbs, I had a nightmare and woke up with adrenaline pumping and abandoned all of my gear in an old house. I suddenly realized that the truck had sat motionless for quite some time, and the old man was turned around in the seat, staring at me. I looked up at him, and he grinned. With sickening horror, I realized that we were at the bottom of the hill on which that wretched house sat. I jumped out of the pickup and thanked the old man who drove off. I slowly walked up the muddy path that led to the house, composing myself. When I reached the yard, I saw the old piles of bones which had shocked me the previous night during the storm. Of course, there were coyotes and foxes in the area, and I had hunted a couple wild turkeys. The critters probably had their dens around here, and they had been using the house as a windbreak. Inside the house, everything appeared as I had left it. My sleeping bag, my pack, and my harmonica was sitting on the floor, and I could see my knife sticking out of the wall across the room. I packed everything up and put on my backpack, then walked over to the stairs and pulled my knife out of the wall. I was about to return it to the sheath on my belt when I looked at the blade and noticed the dried-on blood and that clump of oily black hair stuck to it.
I'm a fisherman in Greece, and sorry for my English, but Breda helps me learn more every day. So I'll tell my story. In a way, it's kind of a ghost story, but there are no real ghosts in it. But to me, it's more haunting than any story of evil spirits that throws things around the room or appears in the dark of night. And I hope you understand why very soon. So we're heading out to sea, and it's a very beautiful day. The sun is shining, there's very little wind, and the sea is nice and calm. During rough sea, there's a lot of work to do, but when it starts to calm down, there's not as much work to do. So me and a crewmate are leaning over the edge of the boat, smoking cigarettes and talking football. And that's when I see a child's backpack floating on the water, one with a little cartoon character on it. It's not unusual to see such things floating on the sea from time to time. But a minute later, I see a child's shoe floating on top of the water. Then my friend moves to the front of the boat and points off into the distance. More and more bags and backpacks and shoes. All kind of personal items are floating on the water surface in a big collection. At first, I think that someone had just dumped a lot of trash into the sea, which starts to make me angry. I'm sure many of you would be angry at saying that. But then picture yourself seeing the first body floating lifelessly on the water, and then the next body, then another, until you see the fourth body is much smaller than the others, and you realize you're looking at a child. Apart from a few murmured curse words and crossing ourselves while we pray, we were totally silent as we passed the bodies. Only the sound of the waves lapping against the boat could be heard, and seeing how some of the bodies were bloated and discolored made me feel like I might vomit. You see, this is in the summer of 2015, when a lot of people from Libya were trying to cross the Mediterranean in small dinghy boats. The traffickers, who they paid a lot of money to, only cared about getting paid. And they didn't care about if the migrants actually landed in Greece or not. They just cared about money. So lots and lots of them were dying when their boat sank and they can't swim. The worst thing though, it wasn't just one floating graveyard that I encountered. It was 3. We even saw one dinghy being turned away by a Greek Coast Guard when the boat was already full of water. I never found out what happened to them. But I pray that they're all safe and okay somewhere. I understand it's a complicated political situation, but innocent children lost their lives. And I see these children with my own eyes. It's easier to forget the phases of my childhood friends than forget these. And when children are dying like that, it's hard to understand why we don't help them. When I'm just a simple fisherman, I do my job. I come home. Try not to think too much. But I am a fisherman that has been haunted by ghosts, and not the kind from storybooks. These are very real.
Back in the 90s, I was working at this call center, and I was the manager at, and we had a lot of calls that came in every day. And our office was located right in the center of a hospital and coffin cellar. It was a small rental place, and we were selling Piggy stocks to people. So our office wasn't really the high-end office like them stock exchanges, and it was a low-rent place, and a really weird place to have an office at, between a hospital and a coffin shop. I was the night shift manager, and I didn't like, but it paid better than the day shift and the staff was less, so it wasn't difficult to manage them all. Day shift was a pain in the ass to manage, and I wasn't ready for that. We had these small coffee breaks in the night where we would just sit outside the office and see the hospital all busy, and even the coffin shop would stay busy most of the times. People would walk across from the hospital to the coffin shop, and being there in the night shift, you would witness it all. It was weird that we did that, but it was very thought-levitating, and we all enjoyed deep conversation in those small coffee breaks of contemplation. Even the employees that worked the night might look weird to the outside world, but they were much deeper in their thinking than compared to the day shift staff, and I managed them both, and I liked the night staff much better. This one day, when there weren't people at the shift because of the flu, there was a flu going around and it hit the office. Most of the employees were down with it, and only a handful were able to attend the office. And we were keeping busy that night since there were a handful of us and a lot of phone calls to handle. The night was too busy, and it was all chaos in there. We were handling calls for our friends. It was a tight night, and we were squeezing in as much call time as we can to hit the night's target. We had to stay ahead from the day shift team. It was important. We were hitting the targets right and were ahead than the team, and we're making sure we kept the lead, and that is why we were working our best to do that. So after a continuous call answering and making the lead by working 4 hours straight without stopping, we arranged a break for everyone and ordered pizza and Coke, and decided to head out and eat by the tables outside the office, and it was a great one. Everyone deserved that. When we got out there, we saw that even the hospital was quiet today, and the coffin shop closed. And it was one of those calm nights that were full of sweet melancholy, and we relaxed and sat on the tables, all of us staring in the distance, just enjoying our pizza and Cokes. It was a great night. And then a man approached us. He asked if we knew when the coffin shop will open. We had no idea, so we told him. But then the man still kept on walking towards the shop, and then we just walked right past the door, and we were all astonished. We thought that the shop was closed, and then around 10 minutes later, the man walked back from the shop and said to us, "When my son comes, you will know. Tell him that I want the blue marbled coffin." And the man just kept walking towards the hospital. We were just dazed with everything weird that was going on. And then around a half hour later, when we were able to get inside, a young man asked us, "Excuse me, is the coffin shop open yet?" And I said, "No, it is closed today. It will remain closed today." And the man looked disappointed. And just out of the feeling in my gut, I said, "Your father wanted the blue marbled coffin." And he stopped and asked me, "What?" And then I told him the story about a man who just walked in a few minutes earlier. Then the man said, "You must be mistaken. My father died this morning. You must have mistaken me for someone else." And then I don't know why I did, but I asked the man to show us the photograph of his father. And then he took out his phone and showed us, and we were stunned. It was in fact his father, and the man was shocked. How could we have all seen the same man? And then we realized it was the ghost of the dead man, trying to convey the one final wish. I went on a date with a Hinge guy once, who right in the middle of it said he had to stop off at his apartment because he forgot his wallet.
This is as we're inexplicably moving from one coffee shop to another one that just happened to be on the same route as his apartment. He asked me if I wanted to come inside, just in case he's searching for a while, and since he's been perfectly nice and non-threatening so far, I didn't see any reason not to. Then as we get into his TV room, he ends up pulling me down onto his beanbag and trying to make out with me. He didn't do it a super aggressive way, so much as he was like trying to be sexy, who was not. Then I called him out on it. He said he was just messing around, but I was so turned off at that point that I ended up just getting up and walking home a few minutes later. He texted me a few times trying to apologize and assure me that it was a joke, but I don't know. It was so cringy that I just couldn't get past it. Fast forward to a year later, and I had read on the local news site that he was arrested on suspicion of killing and assaulting of a woman after the woman that he had been on a date with complained to the police that he had held her up against her will. Apparently, when she tried to leave, he held her captive in his apartment and beat her and assaulted her. He could have faced life in prison, but after just 6 years in prison, he might actually get out this year if parole goes well. 6 years. He should be in prison for the rest of his life, and sometimes I wonder how close I came to being the one tied up in his basement.
Two nights ago, I was awoken by my dog between 11 and 3 a.m. at most. He kept near me when I finally got up and made a low, aggressive growl facing out of my room, but kept close to me. He's never done this before. I've worked with canines for years. They gave me a gut feeling, and then I heard it. Someone talking. In my dad's yard, no more than 20 feet by the sound. Low mumbling or bad whispering. I was blaring Return of the King, yes, the extended version. I need to add that I have childlike hearing, for my age, for context. If you speak in one floor home with 2 doors closed at a whisper, I can make out the words. He went quiet when I opened a drawer too loud to grab my .38 Special, chambered around and noticed a shadow passing by a light outside the blurred window. Home was clear, all doors locked. Nothing odd, but my dog peeled out. I held my flashlight in one hand, went his way and called him to the other side. He was gone. I guess they knew I was home and ran on foot. I went around but thought, okay, I'm good. Well, Florida continues to be Florida. Night 3. My dog does this again in the same frame, waking me up, and at this rate, I just got the 12 gauge. My dog was acting far more protective and gave me the dog body language for major threat, need the pack, can't handle alone. I froze for a moment. 2 people now? This is not good. They must intend to violently take whatever they could be after. It was one new guy and guy 1 from yesterday. I can't risk getting a look. At this rate, they mean business and had to be armed to scope out a place with a Ring camera, 60 pounds of muscle dog, and my grown self with a lifetime of handling weaponry. In the yard around 2:30 a.m. for a second night, they knew I and my dog were home but clearly had a goal. This time, voices were behind the home. My dog then pulled a freaking Leroy Jenkins. He gave one of the most aggressive, loud barks I'd ever heard of any dog do and ran to the wall. I ran to his side, getting him hyped up, yelling, "Mess them up, they're dead men." Now things are clicking for me. This was planned and professional. I checked every inch of the property with the shotgun. My dog was worked up and spooked, but calming to be with. I'm buying a mistake for this one, and a good one. I went inside. I literally kept that gun on me and chambered and in reach of my bed, and I barely slept. Day 4. I did a bit of looking around for misplaced or slightly moved objects or scratched up locks. Yep. One trash can by the gate was rotated 180 degrees, with the handle facing me and not the wall as it always been placed. A few crushed dead twigs as I went back. The head chair was turned to move to the right. A clearly odd thing is that table is set symmetrically, so it's glaringly obviously out of place if you live there. The Ring camera system and my neighbors so far show nothing, but I knew these guys had to have known that my dad was gone. They knew his son lives there, that the dog would eat them and is huge, that I had a gun, and I even announced that it was armed. Yet they came back with backup. Then the dude came back up, moved stuff I didn't know till my maritime buddy told me to check if such and such a rock was out of place. It's a way to gauge the person's awareness and presence, I guess. Whatever their goal was, I don't care. I just want them to know if they come back again, I'll be strapped to the gills.
I live here in New Zealand, and late in 2018, I was feeling sort of lonely. So I decided to download the dating app Tinder to try and find myself a nice guy to go on a few dates with. Maybe even find myself a long-term boyfriend out of it. I ended up matching with this guy who'd come over from Australia, and we chatted for 2 weeks before we finally met up. The conversation was quite light, nothing too heavy, and it was fun. Like I said, it was from Australia. So we talked about Aussie things, and I remember telling him how much I wanted to visit Melbourne. He said that he'd been there once or twice and started making recommendations for some great coffee shops that he knew of. He seemed like a nice, normal guy, and when we agreed to meet, I was happy to do that. But then maybe 5 days or so before we were due to meet, he got really persistent and impatient. He would text me multiple times in a day, and if I didn't reply straight away, he would ask if something was wrong. I thought it was weird that he was being so clingy after starting off so confident. He kept trying to bring the date forward so we could meet up sooner and would totally forget. If I had told him I was busy on a particular day, almost like he wasn't paying attention or didn't care about what I had to say. It was honestly really unusual for someone to be that persistent with me. I'd had guys before who were maybe a bit persistent, but only have a nervous excitement. Different kind of excitement than this awesome guy seemed to be. I just couldn't understand why it was that he could not possibly wait until the Sunday that we'd arranged to meet. It felt very narcissistic, and I should have seen it as the red flag that it was and not just meet up with him at all. I had the messages saved on my phone for a while, so I had a record of the exact dates and times that he sent some of the messages. So on the 2nd of December, he messaged me just after 9 a.m. saying, "Good morning, how are you?" And again about an hour and a half later. I didn't reply to the first message because I was asleep, but I think he took it the wrong way because he said it was fine if I changed my mind and didn't feel like going on the date. That was when I messaged him back and confirmed that I would meet him later on that day. We met up and went to a place called Revelry. It's a very standard bar, very popular, and lots of people go there, but it's definitely more of a nighttime bar. I had never drunk there during the afternoon or the daytime, but it was open, seemed like it had a chill atmosphere, and he wanted to go there, so that's where we went. He was a bit bigger than the pictures on his Tinder profile showed, and it was obvious that he had put on a little bit of weight. He had big distinctive eyes, and he was very, very clean cut. I mean, like his clothes looked freshly washed and ironed. He was also very well groomed, obviously took good care of his skin and stuff like that. Like he was really good looking. I remember asking him a lot of different questions, and he just sort of talked to me. He tried to ask me a few questions, but they weren't very in-depth ones. I thought he was a bit nervous, to be honest, but that's not unusual for a first date. But things start to sort of unravel at one point, because he had said one thing in messages about where he worked and a different thing on the date. I started to feel a bit uneasy, like I wanted to trust him, but as soon as he started to put on some inconsistencies, I began to wonder if he was just lying about stuff to impress me, because he was from Australia. I asked him the whereabouts that he had met his Kiwi friends, and he told me that all his friends were police officers or somehow involved in law enforcement. He said how he had met with them while out drinking in various bars, how they gotten to know each other over time, and they regularly invite him back to their places over barbecues and stuff like that. He also mentioned that his best friend from Australia was coming over to be a Crown Court prosecutor. That's why I noticed that a lot of the stuff that he was talking about kind of had this running theme to it. It kind of seemed like he was obsessed with that sort of thing, which in hindsight explains an awful lot. I think he was sort of trying to process some of the things that he had been up to over the previous few days, and it came out in his conversation style. He obviously thought an awful lot about policemen, dead bodies, and ways people can be killed, prosecution justice in the court system, and it just came out in a very strange way like that on our first date. Like I said before, we talked quite a lot about him being friends with lots of different policemen, and he went into quite a bit of depth regarding the details of certain investigations that they apparently shared with him. He said that we're having a really tough time around the time because of bodies going missing in the White Toggy Ranges. He told me that police corp sniffing dogs can only detect decaying flesh about 4 feet deep under the soil, so if the bodies are buried in a deeper than that, the police won't be able to find them. I thought it was a bit of a morbid thing to talk about on the first date, but it was an interesting fact nonetheless. He also got into a conversation about all the different kinds of poisonous snakes in Australia, and he became quite animated about it. He obviously had a passion for the natural world. It was quite out there, but I thought it was cute. I love animals too, so I was glad we had something in common and made me feel a bit more relaxed again. But then, right as I started feeling comfortable with him again, he started telling me this really bizarre and creepy story. He told me how crazy it is that a guy can make one little mistake and then go to jail for the rest of his life for it. He went on to tell me about this guy he knew back in Oz who had consensual intimacy involving choking with his girlfriend, then that ended up accidentally killing her in the process. He assured me that the whole thing was a horrible, tragic accident, how things just went wrong suddenly, and how the guy was really upset because he loved her and would never hurt her on purpose. But still, the guy got done for manslaughter and was sent to prison for a long, long time. What I know now is this could have been him testing on his story on me when he was able to see that I was a bit uncomfortable with what he was saying. He tried to change the subject, so we could talk about more mundane things. I didn't try to make a swift exit or anything. I'm quite used to dealing with all sorts of people. And I'm not saying people who talk about dark things on the first date are like bad people or anything, but it was definitely weird. We hung out for a while, but after about 3 hours or so, I made some excuses as to why I had to leave, and we said goodbye. As we were parting ways, he said, "My car is this way," and pointed off down a particular road. My car was down the same road. But at that stage, I was feeling uneasy and my instincts had just kicked in telling me to walk a different way. He was also a lot bigger than me, so if something went wrong, I knew I wouldn't be able to defend myself. In hindsight, it was a good decision. It was my intuition sense. My brain was saying this was strange. That was strange. And looking back on it now, it is really strange to think of who he actually was. I don't think it is the realm of what normal human brains can comprehend. But just the day before we met up, the guy was out on that first date with had murdered a girl in his hotel room, a British girl called Grace McLean. The reason he had brought up his friend accidentally strangling his girlfriend is because that's exactly how he'd killed her. Although whether or not he was on purpose is another question entirely. Also, the reason he had mentioned the whole Toggery mountain range is because that's where he ended up disposing of her body. And all that other stuff about sniffer dogs was research that he'd been doing the previous night that was still sort of consuming his mind. It is hard to look back and think that that had just happened to her. From what I understand, while we were on our date, her body was still in that hotel room of his, hidden under the bed or something, wrapped in a blanket. There's nothing I could have done, and I know that now, but it is still really hard to come to terms with that. I do think if it had been a date in the evening, potentially, I could have been a victim. I take a lot of solace in the fact that I do have my wits about me and do take safety in online dating quite seriously, and that is nothing against any women who are willing to go home with someone on the first date. But I do want to say to young women who take one more step in your thinking when you're on a date to see how well you know this person actually. Since then, I have been on dates with lovely, trustworthy men, but think how well do I really know them? It has made me go a little slower and divulge a little less personal information to them. I know in modern dating, it is quite common to give people your Instagram handle, but you aren't giving people access to a lot of personal information. It is really dangerous. And I just want to encourage people to take a step back and think before they do that. There's nothing wrong with taking a step back, taking it slow and pacing yourself a bit. Alcohol has a big effect. It is part of the social fabric of dating and part of life these days. But it still comes with a massive risk. Women need to be really aware of how much they are drinking on dates, and unfortunately, drinks are sometimes spiked. We live in this world where people are still idealistic about how things should be on dates, but incidents like these take things back 10 or 20 years, or women are still having to grip their keys between their fingers, or can't leave a drink on the table. We aren't as developed as we think we are in areas such as dating. Technology has gotten ahead of us. I think people are as they always are. I think with the advancement of technology, we thought we would become more refined, but we are just the same, but with new technology. I think the invention of dating apps is a wonderful thing, and I wouldn't want to live in a world without that. But I just wished for a world where women don't have to think about their safety all the time. I started my career at Walmart from cleaning the aisles and arranging stock, and then slowly moved my way up to becoming the manager at the Walmart. I was told that I will be managing the new Walmart at a local town in Arkansas. I was pretty excited about the job, and I wasn't aware of the locality or the city people, but it was a massive pay hike for me, and even more, the company was providing me good insurance and housing facility, so I wasn't the one to pass on such wonderful opportunity. I was aiming for the corporate office to be the next thing for me. I knew in order to move ahead, the corporate office is going to be the next big thing for me. The new job was pretty easy for me because I was managing the place, and instead of taking orders, I was giving them. The house was pretty big, and I was quite sure that it is going to be an easy run for me. My day-to-day job was managing the employees, and at the end of the day, I was to check in the registers and gather the team up to discuss things about the accounts and plan things out for the next. So by the end of the night, I was the last one to leave the building. Good thing that the company gave me a car, because there was no such thing as public transportation in that place. Even though the town wasn't very big, traveling from one place to another could get very strenuous because of the place being dark and covered with mostly forests. So a car was much help. And since I was the one to close the place at night, I was the last to leave the building. First few months, I never really noticed anything strange about the place. But then one day, it all started to come in right in front of me. I started noticing details that I wouldn't rather do. There was this weird freakiness in the parking lot of the Walmart. It started when I was late one night for the closing of it, and there was a figure right around the corner where the parking ends. I looked at it and said, "Sir, the store times are over. Please move away from the spot." And as I yelled it across the other side of the parking lot, the voice replied, "All right, I'll be out of your hair in a bit." And I didn't really make much of it, and I left. I came back the next morning knowing that there was a man there lurking in the corner. I decided to go check the corner out to see if anything is out of the ordinary, and there was nothing, so I figured the guy must have left or something. The day went by smooth. There were no problems. The day went on without any issue. And then, as the night came in, we discussed the plan matched the sales, and I was the last as usual to close in the door and lock in the facilities. And as I walked downstairs, I saw that the same figure was yet again lurking in the shadow, and yet again I said, "Sir, the store times are over. Please move away from the spot." And as I yelled it across the other side of the parking lot one more time, the voice yelled yet again, replied the very same thing as yesterday. "All right, I'll be out of your hair in a bit." It was all very weird, but I think I was still not bothered by it a lot. It kept happening almost every day now. I would open up and nothing. During the day, nothing. And as the time got by and the evening set in, I waited for everybody to leave. And as I closed the door and decided to move on to my car, I once again saw the figure hanging out by the parking lot. And then it wasn't just one person anymore, it was two of them. I was becoming a bit of a habit for them, so I decided to change it and walk over towards them to make them stop lurking around in shadows in the corner. It is not very legal, and they can be held liable for the things they do in that corner, which was the property of Walmart. I approached them, and as I kept moving, the figures were getting dull and hazy, until I reached the very place where they were, and then they disappeared right in front of my eyes like they were never there. The thing that just got weirder, and then I moved back to the car and they were back. I was puzzled, and from across I said, "Guys, don't fool around too much." And the voice came back and it said, "Don't worry, Stuart, we'll move." I left at first. I thought I was being played and I realized they knew my name, so I figured maybe it is somebody from the office. So I decided to confront them in the store the next morning. I called in the meeting and asked them about whoever hangs around the spot after the Walmart is closed, and everybody said they don't hang around after the work. I asked Juan to check in the cameras and said that no one had been in that spot for weeks other than me just last night. I was puzzled by it all. Being in a new city and knowing nothing, I decided to ignore it and not dwell in the matter for long. I wanted to make sure that I am not the only one seeing this, and this time, I decided that Juan will close down the store with me, and I agreed to drop him off at his house, which was 6 miles away from home. We went back, and there it was, the two shadows standing right in front of us. I looked at Juan, and Juan looked right back at me. I asked him if he is seeing the same thing that I am seeing, and he agreed and remembered whatever God he believed in. He looked at me with a chill and said, "That could be shadows, sir. Anybody's shadows. Let us just leave before it harms us." I told him to calm down, and we got in the car and started driving away. Then suddenly a large thud was heard over the roof of my car, and I thought maybe something fell over us. I got out. There was nothing. I sat back in and saw the shadows were running towards us, and as I got in, one freaked out and jammed his leg right into the driver's seat and jammed it out with full power on the accelerator. And I remember I wasn't even settled and I was just half in when he did that. The car went blazing into the wall, and last thing we would remember was trying to get out of the wrecked car. I got out of the car, and then I saw that I was in the exact position I was where the shadows were. I was bleeding all over, and Juan had his neck broken. And then we looked into the distance. There was a shadow, again across the parking. And then it struck me. I was the shadow. It was me, the shadow was me, leading to my death. I realized it was death when even after the car wreck, nothing happened to us, and there was no pain that we felt. Because no matter we tried, we were just stuck in the loop of the circumstances that led me to death. I was the shadow of my own death. This happened when I was a bartender about 4 years ago, but I think about it often, and it has changed the way I operate throughout life. I now refuse to go to any store alone after midnight. I was 25 and an attractive slender blonde at the time. On a busy Friday night, I was bartending with the bar manager, and he had noticed that we were very low on some bar necessities after the dinner rush. Lemons, limes, bitters, that kind of thing. So I was sent out to a 24-hour grocery store down the road to pick up the odds and ends that we would require to get us through the weekend. I picked up everything that was asked of me without trouble at the store, until I got to the liquor aisle. There were two country-looking guys that were probably around my age in the aisle, and they were staring at me and whispering to each other in a way that made me uncomfortable, so I assumed they were making comments about me, all pretty innocent so far. Before they could approach me, I grabbed what I needed very quickly and power walked to the self-checkout. They really booked it out of there. Because when you're a bartender, it's kind of like you're on a stage and are required to be charming and interact with people that you otherwise absolutely wouldn't be able to tolerate unless you were being paid to do so. This is another reason why I'm not a bartender anymore. They get the self-checkout and hot on my tail. The two guys, I'm scanning my stuff, and they use the scanning station next to me. I get a better look at them now as they are right next to me. One is taller, muscular, an average look. The other one is shorter and more plump. They both looked dirty, and their eyes were completely bloodshot. I'm not even sure if they were high or something, or had already been drinking for a while. They continued to stare at me, and our eyes awkwardly met. So I did the pleasant Midwestly thing to do and flashed them a quick, half-fast, closed-lip smile to be polite. The taller one starts trying to talk to me. "Hey, looks like you're ready to party." Huh? I replied something like, yeah, something like that. It's not for me though. They walk close to me and ignore their responsibility to scan their items. Oh, must be for your boyfriend. Ha! I flash the awkward tight-lipped smile again and roll my eyes slightly. Like this is your hint that I'm not interested, fellas. The taller one continues to try to talk to me. You should come hang out with us tonight. We could show you a real good time if you know what I mean. No thanks, I'm good. Already have plans. But the taller one starts to get upset that his moves aren't working like he'd hoped, and starts using a more threatening tone and moves very close to me, literally 2 inches away. But I ignore him, staying focused on the scanner. I don't think he had showered in a few days by the smell of him. He gets a little louder and says, I see how it is. You probably only screw doctors and rich men like that. You think you're too good for us. We can show you that you want. We can teach you a lesson. Now I'm not sure what context he meant this in, but it definitely wasn't good. Still looking at him, I turn away. So my body is blocking his view of my purse, which I set on the scanner to grab my 4-inch pocket knife out and slide it up my jacket sleeve in case I need to protect myself, acting like I'm searching for my wallet. I do this, however, in view of the self-scan worker station at the podium, and look at her eyes with wide eyes trying to communicate that I do not feel safe and that I might need help. I turn back to the machine and slide my credit card to pay, while the creepy and hostile guys are practically standing on top of me. The machine malfunctions and starts beeping. The lady worker comes over immediately, and the guys standing next to me change their expression from I'm planning to torture you for a few days and toss your body to a creek to just your friendly good old country boys making polite conversation of their hair. They actually tried to act like I knew them and were friends, so the worker wouldn't be alerted to their ill intentions. They tried joking with the worker, saying I was stealing something and that's why the machine went off. The worker was definitely not buying it. She was a 6-foot-tall woman with some muscle on her. I wouldn't mess with her on my best day. She pressed a few buttons on the screen, shooting. The guy's a very unimpressed look when they were trying to act charming and cancels the order completely. She turns to me and says, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am. The machine seems to not be working correctly. Will you gather your things and I'll ring you up at an actual register? She puts her hand on my back and gives me a wide-eyed look like I gave her a minute earlier, letting me know that she sees I'm in danger. I pick up my things and follow her to the register that's near the security office. The guys linger around the self-scan, still glaring at me, and eventually complete their purchases, but standing at the exit assuming they're waiting for me. I felt like I would be walking to my death. If I made it to the exit in that moment, the workers kept a close eye on the guys and scans my items. As she's scanning, she tells me there really wasn't anything wrong with the machine I was using. It just misread my credit card, and she said I had a bad feeling about those guys from the moment they walked in. And when I saw them getting aggressive toward you, I already ranked security to be ready to walk you to the parking lot and make sure you left safely when you're ready to leave. When I saw you take that knife out and put it in your sleeve, getting ready to protect yourself. Good girl. As much as I'd like to see you show them they picked the wrong girl to mess with, I'm glad I was able to pull you aside and make sure you were safe. I see them waiting by the door for you. I'll just keep pressing buttons on the screen and act like I'm having trouble with your order until they give up and go outside. Our security officer and I are both going to escort you to your vehicle when you leave. I thought to myself, this woman seriously deserves a raise. I thanked her over and over again and told her what they said to me, and I was getting afraid because I don't know what these guys are capable of. As I'm talking to her, my bar manager calls me to see what's taking so long. I explain what's happening, and he was obviously very concerned and ready to come up there himself and kick some ass. A sweet sentiment indeed. By the time I hung up, the guys had given up and walked out to the parking lot. The worker said to give it another few minutes because she had a feeling they may still be in there waiting for me to walk out and see which vehicle was mine so they could follow me. My instant thought was no way they have to be gone by now. But I was wrong. The worker and security guard escorted me out, and it was after midnight, so you can imagine how empty the lot was. Toward the back of the lot, there sat an old big pickup truck running with the lights on pointing towards the store. It was a huge parking lot, and it wouldn't have made sense for them to initially park like that, So I'm assuming they moved the truck to sit that way, so that they had a full view of when I exited the store and got to my vehicle. It was like being stalked by hungry lions. When I unlocked my car and they saw that me, the worker, and the guard were looking directly at them, and that I wasn't getting in my car until we watched them leave, they then peeled out of the parking lot. I mean, they seriously did a burnout to establish that they were pissed and trying to intimidate us. Our poor creeps didn't get their way. I thanked the worker and the guard over and over again, as I'm certain that they had just saved my life, or at least saved me from having to live with whatever those guys were planning to do with me. I did write a long letter to the store manager and their corporate location, describing how their employees protected me and how grateful I was. I really hope that earned her a promotion bonus raise or something. She didn't know me at all and was ready to protect me, which really isn't her job, but she did it anyway. Needless to say, I do not go late night shopping by myself anymore, and never will again.
This was a few years ago, just after I'd left college. I'd been working at Walmart for a while before moving to the customer service counter. My first holiday season was almost my last. After experiencing the post-Christmas returns period, I threatened to quit if my boss didn't move me out. Thankfully, she relented and I was given my own department. That's where I would stay until the next year's returns rush. I was doing my regular thing in electronics when my boss came to me for a favor. One of the girls scheduled to work customer service had just quit on the spot. She couldn't spare anyone else, and she knew I'd worked there before. I told her no before she could even finish, but she continued to beg. As one last desperate move, she offered to give me New Year's Eve and day off. It was an offer too good to refuse, and I reluctantly agreed. In spite of the desk being backed up to the doors, my fellow coworker and I were blowing through the line fast. People seemed to be a bit nicer than they had the previous year. That was until I began assisting this unkempt-looking man. He had a car seat for a toddler that he wanted to return. The guy seemed a little out of it. I had asked him twice about the receipt before he pulled this crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to me. I unfolded it and began the refund process. As I took the seat from the counter and sat it in a nearby basket, I made a passing comment to a coworker about the guy returning it because he needed to get high. It was just something that I expected from the area, something to that effect. I know it was in bad taste, but my coworker laughed and I returned to the counter to give the guy his money. He was staring a hole through me and gritting his teeth. He said, "I heard that. I'd watch your back if I were you." I could tell he meant business. I didn't want to draw attention, so I apologized under my breath and quickly handed him his money. Before he was able to say anything else, I called for the next customer. He reluctantly stepped away, but remained close by, continuing to give me a death stare for several minutes. There was something about the look that terrified me. Although I kept working, a feeling of nausea boiled in my guts until he finally left. The next 3 hours dragged by, and because of the incident, my mood had taken a drastic downturn. I was overjoyed to see it end, but terrified of what may await me outside. There was no way I was going to my car alone. I went to seek out a coworker that I'd been dating on and off for a while. He agreed to walk me out to my car, and we stopped just inside the doors to look out. I didn't see the guy, so we continued on. The two of us stopped again briefly, but there was still no sign of him anywhere. Customers were coming and going, driving by us. Nothing looked off, and we headed across the lot to my car. I was relieved and beginning to think that I had just been overreacting. I knew it was a stupid thing to say, but I didn't know what the outcome would be. Then a car came out of nowhere and began racing up from behind us. The headlights were blinding, and I just began to panic and I froze. And if it wasn't for my companion, I may have been run down. He pushed me between two cars, following close behind. As the car sped by, the driver hurled a disgusting name at me and disappeared onto the access road. I thanked my hero and slowly got back to my feet. He insisted that we call the cops, but I refused. As stupid as it may sound, I was afraid involving them could cost me my job. But allow me to explain. I've been chewed out for being rude to customers before. I would have to explain why the man was so angry to me. If my boss heard what I'd said, I'd definitely lose my promised 2 days off and probably be fired. Rightfully so, I guess. Of course, I could lie and play dumb, but that never works out in the end. I decided to wager on the chance that he was done with me and would move on. And that turned out to be the case, fortunately. Various coworkers continued to walk me to my car after that shift. 2 months passed before I figured I was safe and returned to going solo. To this day, I've not seen that man again and hope never to. Whether I just got lucky or he never intended to kill me, I'll likely never know. Either way, I'm just happy to be alive. My attitude towards strangers changed after that incident, and for the remainder of my time working directly with customers, I made a concerted effort to treat them with respect. I suggest you take this story to heart. We may all have our little episodes of disrespect when dealing with our fellow person. Nobody's perfect. I'm definitely not. But keep in mind, however, you never really know what a stranger is capable of. One arrogant little slip could cost you your life.
I went to beauty school just after high school, so it's just learning what it is like to be an adult, work, go to school, and socialize at the same time. If you've ever gone to beauty school, you know the hours are pretty lengthy, and it's a lot of work in a short amount of time. You also know that you're mostly crammed with a lot of women of different ages and a few boys if there's a straight man in school, and he's even mildly attractive, obviously considering you're attracted to that type of person. Most women that score just so at all because it's the only male person we are seeing during most of our weeks. That takes me to Dave. A few years older than me, tall, drives a Ducati to school, mysterious and handsome. Every girl was always putting a little extra makeup, turning their hips towards him, flirting when he was around. He was cute, quiet, and always knew what to say. I was as interested in catching his eye till he randomly asked me to meet up with him for a bite one day after school. I was single, needing to experience dating for the first time, and it didn't seem that bad to hang out with. Things started off very sweet and genuine. He'd sent good night texts, joke with me at school, and even genuinely seemed like he wanted to hang out more and more. We'd go to bars, and he knew everyone, so I could just get right in. I was underage at the time. We go eat, see shows to step drink. I feel like I was starting to feel like an adult enjoying the life and being wooed by a handsome, slightly older man. We drove around on his bike. He'd take me to nice, quiet dinners, always offered to pay, and even didn't little things like hold his arm out when I was walking downstairs or off a curb. I'd never experienced this type of gentleman before. But as quickly as the sweet dates came, so did a very weird, calculated, and controlling behavior. He would start to ask why I didn't smile with my teeth. Was it because I was embarrassed at myself? He would sit behind me working at school and taught me about how slow I was. He'd say things like, "Don't sit like that," or "say things that way. That's not what ladies do, and I'm a lady, right? Don't wear that lipstick, it's trashy." Butts, I guess. Maybe I was being inappropriate. Maybe he's right. I should act more like an adult and a child. Be better at school. Look more like an adult. He brought me to his house one night, a place he rented a room from. Suddenly, this stoic Edward Cullen type turned into a person I didn't recognize. Outside of the random mood shift, his room was filled with clothing and garbage like old Gatorade bottles filling the floors. There was a TV and a bed. Of all the things I could really make out in the room, he brushed dirt off his bed for me to sit down. I hung out for a while, and he oddly confessed he never brushed his teeth. Okay, well, looking at this room, I could believe that. He also mentioned that he just bought new clothes when he needed them and never washed. The dirty ones just left them there. This is all in the first 2 or 3 weeks. Kind of a red flag if you asked me. The lights were off at one point, and we're watching a show, and I see a light like a cell phone right outside the window behind the TV. I jump and get his attention, but he had to have seen. He brushes it off, saying it must be a roommate though. I notice he's texting someone at the same time. Let it go for the night. Eventually go home, but so feel uncomfortable. When the phone calls started happening in the stories of his ex, they lived together. She was 10 years older than him and had a 6-year-old kid. She was crazy. If he and I would hang out, I'd suddenly start getting calls from an unknown number. The minute I walked in my door, they would ring to my voicemail, got them, and no one would say a word till the message ran out of time. They'd happen every 10 minutes for 3 or so hours. I asked him about this, if it was him, and he said it may just be his crazy ex. But how would she have my number? He'd say, well, I have to give her some of her things, and she stole my phone at one point. Must have taken your number. So the gentlemanly dates would happen, and the gifts, sending roses and coffee to my work, showing up with a massage and spa packages every week. We still saw each other at beauty school, almost alien. He'd be kind, but it was always hush-hush until it was outside of school. I was torn. This person lying? Or is this the kind of person to want to date me? Maybe he just has some flaws and a crazy ex. Then the texts and Facebook messages started coming, clarifying it was her. He told me about your messed up life and secrets you've told him. I know he just saw you. I know you were at his house. I was outside his window looking in. Your red dress was nice. He laughs about you. Poor you. Just a stupid little girl. And stuff like that over and over. I block her. Then she'd have friends send me the same BS. She freaked me out, and he always denied it and apologized for her behavior. Then the word Daisy wouldn't show up for school, and he would text me during the day saying they were together, sending pictures of him. I tried to confront him, but he always denied having anything to do with her and repeating that she wanted to ruin his life. And then she started going to my work, telling my coworker she was my friend and would color things on the kids menu, like my name plus Dave, art, her, and tell them she wanted me to have it. She'd send me a random picture of him in a booth at my work, and I put the pieces together when I got there and got her notes, asking my coworkers where she was sitting and what she looked like. It was gross and embarrassing, let alone scary. My car was broken into at school, and nothing was taken from it, but a bill that had my address on it. Then was so scared. I came home at any point in time, and she started calling me over and over as soon as I closed the door behind me. I felt trapped. She would call my work and school saying she was my mom and try to get more info on me, or call them as a customer saying to get me fired. My roommates finally kicked me out because they were rightfully freaked out. So I turned to the police. They put me in contact with a detective who I handled all of the calls, texts, and messages, plus notes she left in my work. I never answered the phone or responded to a single message from her. I had hundreds of calls, texts for at least a month. They came in every day from the same number. I never blocked that number after the first few were blocked, so I could keep a log of all the attempts. Plus, I have to keep a journal of every incident leading up to me coming to the police just in case. I watched a lot of crime documentaries. He told me that there was nothing he could do to trace the number back to a specific person, and since she hadn't threatened my physical safety, his hands were tied. The very next day, he calls me in, he's furious, telling me he can't help me if I'm harassing her back. I was confused, and when I asked what he meant, he said, "You're calling a mother non-stop throughout the night, terrifying her and her kid." But it was a 20-year-old, and she was 36. Of course he's going to believe the adult, but I never called her. He asked me to come to his office and show me his evidence he has against me. She forged him tons of texts, saying things like, "Well, I can't really say them here, but they were just toxic," which is full of malice, and I just broke down. I would never say some of the things that she had said that I said, and I know I didn't send these tons of texts, especially overnight when I had school the next day. He didn't believe me and completely dismissed me. He ultimately turned against me and was now on her side, and this was crushing. I broke things off for good with David, basically told him to screw off. We still had to go to school together, and he was terrible. I embarrassed myself in front of my friends defending him so long. My work, my school, who I had to beg to make sure this girl didn't come around again, and a detective who ultimately didn't believe a word I said just to get some peace. My friends were tired of seeing me scared, stressed, and constantly talking about this weird situation happening to me. I was over it all. She finally left me alone once I moved, got a new car, a new phone, deleted social media. But it still freaks me out that we all live in the same town. She messaged me a few years ago from a different account when I was back on social media, and said she was sorry that she was manipulated by Dave and that they did this to too many girls. This was disturbing and gut-wrenching to me, to the mother of a 6-year-old, really have nothing better to do than play messed up mind games with a sociopath, maybe 2 sociopaths together. Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
Animal or monster? After spending several hours setting up the spiderweb decoration in my yard for Halloween, I was feeling both pleased with myself and eager to finish the job. As I surveyed my work, I realized that some green liquid slime was the final touch to complete the spooky scene. As I scanned the yard, I thought maybe I could add more creepiness to what I had done there. I quickly consulted my mental list of Halloween decorations needed, from spooky lights to creepy jack-o'-lanterns, and remembered that Jimmy's store was the best place to get it. Thinking of completing my decorating task, I got into my car and prepared to drive the 3 miles to Jimmy's store. However, as I started the engine, I noticed the fuel gauge was dangerously low, showing only a sliver of fuel left. Knowing that my car wouldn't make it to Jimmy's and back without running out of gas, I decided to fill up my tank quickly at the gas station just a few meters away. As I drove towards the gas station, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The fuel gauge in my car was about to be empty, and I didn't want to risk running out of gas before reaching my destination. I kept a careful eye on the gauge, watching as the needle crept closer and closer to empty. Finally, I spotted a gas station up ahead and breathed a sigh of relief. Pulling into the station, I noticed no other cars around. It was nighttime, and the silence added to the eerie atmosphere. I got out of my car and began filling up the tank, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I scanned the area looking for signs of life, but no one was in sight. The only sounds were the hum of the gas pump and the rustle of leaves in the wind. As I continued to fill up my tank, I couldn't help but feel like something was off. The minutes ticked by slowly, and the silence only grew more oppressive. It felt like an eternity before my tank was finally full. As I was about to enter my car, I noticed a small fox standing a few feet away, staring at me intently. I couldn't help but notice that she was unusually small and incredibly cute, with eyes bigger than any fox I had ever seen. I froze for a moment to take in the sight of this charming animal, but then I remembered that I had a habit of feeding stray dogs whenever I would go out, so I thought I could give her a treat too. I had some jerky treats in my car, so I took them out and threw them in her direction. The fox looked at me for a few seconds, almost as if she was about to say something, before she stepped forward, sniffed the jerky, and started eating. It was interesting that she only ate the clean ones and left the ones covered in dirt untouched. As she ate, I took out my phone and started filming her, hoping to show the video to others later. But then, something strange happened. The fox suddenly stopped eating, looked at me, and took a majestic leap inside my car. At first I was surprised but not frightened. I thought the fox just wanted to explore my car, but as I saw the back of her head, I froze in fear. The fox had another face behind her head. It was a surreal sight that I couldn't believe my eyes. I wondered if I was hallucinating, but the second face was still there staring at me. I tried to stay calm and think rationally, but my heart was pounding, and my mind was racing with questions. If someone else were to hear my account of what happened, I'm certain they'd be convinced that I was spouting nonsense, and would say something along the lines, "What in the name of Voldemort are you talking about?" But I swear on my life that what I saw was real. The fox had two faces. At first I couldn't believe my eyes. How could a creature possibly have two faces? My mind raced for a logical explanation, and I even came up with the idea that the fox might be a product of a vanishing twin syndrome, where one twin consumes the other before birth. But as soon as I thought this, the second face disappeared before my eyes, leaving me frozen and petrified. The fox then turned towards me, and I swear its eyes were piercing through me, as if it were threatening me. I was terrified, and I felt a lump form in my throat. Suddenly, the fox leaped out of my car with the same majesty with which it had entered. Yet I couldn't help but find it creepy, as I was left shaken and disturbed. As soon as I saw the strange creature walking away, I felt my heart racing and my body tensing up. I wasted no time and quickly ran towards my car, fumbling with the keys to unlock the door. Once inside, I took a deep breath and started the engine, the sound of the car providing a small sense of safety. I glanced at the rearview mirror, making sure the creature was nowhere in sight, before stepping on the gas and speeding away, leaving the eerie scene behind. As I drove away from the gas station, I couldn't help but keep glancing in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows. Multiple questions surged through my mind. What kind of creature was that? Was it dangerous? Should I report it to someone? I pulled out my phone to watch the video I had recorded of the fox, but what I saw made my blood run cold. The video was empty. There was no sign of the fox with two faces. It was as if the creature had never been there, or I had never filmed it. As memories of that spine-chilling creature flood my mind, I ponder the plausibility of the age-old myth about the souls of the departed returning on Halloween night, and the existence of numerous other monsters that supposedly roam the earth on that day. The mere thought of it sends shivers down my spine, and I cannot help but wonder if there is any truth to these tales.
I was about 14 years old, and my family had just moved to a new town. I was also lucky enough to make a fast friend at my new school. and we subsequently made plans to go trick-or-treating together since it was coming up to Halloween night. Because we were 14 and lived in a fairly safe neighborhood, my parents told us that they didn't think I needed to chaperone that year. So while everything was going great and we were having fun getting some solid candy, it was kind of cool just walking around our own, feeling sort of grown up. We knock at one house and this middle-aged man opened the door. He seemed happy to see my new friend and me, so I assumed we were in for some grade A candy. I don't actually remember what candy he handed out, but I didn't remember what happened next. He asked us to come inside, which is weird, but we really wanted candy. So I guess we were dumb enough to take the bait. It disappears for a moment, and I kind of assumed that he was going to get us some candy. But when he re-emerges, he doesn't have any, only a camera in his hand. Then he asked if he could take a couple of pictures of us, explaining they like to take photos of kids every Halloween because he loved seeing the costumes, how he was something of a collector. At this point, even being a fairly naive 14-year-old, I got weirded out, yet knew it was best not to upset the man and let them take the picture, and then we could leave. So he takes the photo of us, waits for the Polaroid to come out, then he hands us a pen, asks us to sign our names on the back. Me and my new friend did as we were told, but although we'd been dumb enough to actually go into this guy's house with him, we weren't dumb enough to sign our actual names, so we wrote fake ones on the back just to satisfy him. Only then were we allowed to leave with the candy that he gave us after we signed. I don't know if this guy was on some sort of list or some sort of offender or anything like that. There were no more run-ins with them, and nothing in the way of rumors going around town. But I still get creeped out thinking about what he did with that photo of me.